Hey folks, how's everybody doing?
Not bad, not bad. Yourself?
Hanging in there, man. It's good.
All right, all right.
I hope you guys don't I hope my signal doesn't get too sketchy. It's raining really hard at my house today, so
Well, luckily your guest is going to be talking more than you, so
let's hope so. Give this gas bag a rest.
oh, I just heard the and then I saw your face pop up.
Tell you what, man, I talked so much yesterday, I lost my voice.
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
Well, I've had some time to rest, but yeah, we had fun in cinematography yesterday. So
Oh, you do cinematography?
cinematography 2 this semester. Yeah.
Oh, I really wanted to do that.
That's the playtime for grown-ups class. That's where I love to just sort of play.
I wanted to do that one. But I think the pandemic got in the way, so I think it
Probably.
was canceled for a couple semesters.
Oh yeah, the I had to quarantine last fall, and the teacher who stepped in got COVID, and so I think the whole class kind of wheels came off the wagon at that point. So yeah, this is our first semester back. So
Usually Yisan takes care of the cinematography classes.
who's that?
Yisan.
Eason. Oh, Eason's long
Oh,
gone. Eason took
really?
a job. Yeah, Eason took a job in Georgia last year.
Traitor.
Yeah. No, I'm the instructor of record for cinematography 1 and 2. So
Okay.
I built the structures and syllabus for both of those classes. So
Oh, nice.
but yeah, there's not enough sections of it. I really wish that we could really get everybody who wants to take those classes. I think everybody has to take cinematography 1, but cinematography 2 is a fairly difficult class with a huge waiting list for some reason. So
Well, it's
trying
it's
to
it's
sort
supposed
that
to be one of those most fun classes, because
I
like
try to
it's
make
one
it
of the
fun.
few classes that you actually do field work in class.
Yeah, I know. That's something I'm trying to change as well, actively from within. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Oh, good. Maybe I joined UCF at the wrong time then.
Nah, not so much. I mean, anytime's a good time to, I think, to go back to school if you're really into it. So let me I'm going to share my screen with you guys right now and get ready to get started. So I've been looking at your intro videos, and things are looking pretty good. Why did you do that? I'm so bad with Zoom, even now, after all this time. You go to the modules page here. Yeah, some really great videos, people sharing their anxiety and their plans and what they're looking forward to. I think that's a lot of fun. Um, Today I've got a really great guest for you guys. We're going to bring him on here in a few minutes. We have an editor to talk to. And if you're looking into the modules, just check, because I'm starting to slot in everybody that I've confirmed for this semester. I'm starting to slot in web courses so that you can see who's coming and what their focus is going to be. So we're here today is Ashton down here. Next week, I've got someone coming in from Production Hub, which I think a lot of you should be interested in. That's like it's a multi-service directory. It has headquarters in Orlando, and it's all over the country. But it's a great resource to find service providers, find crew, find film offices in cities all over the country. Like we have an Orlando film office. I don't know if you folks realize that or not. Not only do we have a Tallahassee film office, which kind of tracks film economics and film projects going on in the state, but each of the major cities has a film office as well. And so we have both the Tallahassee unit and the Orlando unit that are constantly in touch with, things that are coming in, things that are happening in state, kind of cropping up organically. And they're a good resource to know about and to know the folks involved. They have meetings and stuff where you can attend and find out what's going on, and a really great website you can look into. So Janelle, I think, is going to be a source of some really good information for you. Week after that, I've got a fella coming in who is not only a film teacher himself, but he's kind of a personal branding expert. And most recently, which I think is a lot of fun and very coincidental, is he is a doctoral candidate at UCF. So Chris will be coming in a couple of weeks to talk to you folks. And then after that, I think I haven't put too many more names up, but I've got a whole docket of people that are going to come in and help to create some awareness for you guys. So let me pop into the modules just really quick. I'm not going to belabor the points of resumes and so forth. I think everybody here knows what a resume is and what it's good for. The thing of it is take some of the tips to heart about designing your resume and making it clean and very easy to read. And listen to the tips, particularly about structure and I don't know. I'm one of those people that thinks that a resume shouldn't be too crazy. I think it should be a simple document to read. I think you should be able to find the information you need very quickly about an individual and get a kind of a mental picture of who you're interviewing, without a lot of minutia or a lot of confusing information that's difficult to sift through at a glance. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be really honest with you. I mean, I worked in the film industry for 30 years and never used a resume once until I retired from 728. So I'm not often the best person to ask about the value of a resume, being that I'm the sort of exception to the rule. But I do think there's a time and a place for it. And I think that since the industry is changing, it can't hurt to have these documents at your disposal. Keep them updated and make sure that you have your best work sort of listed at the top of any of these documents. Anything that is the most notable, most recent stuff should be fairly prominent on the page so people can get sort of an up to the date idea of who you are, what you're doing, what you're working towards. Okay. That's the biggest thing. That's kind of the biggest question. For instance, production managers and producers are trying to answer when they meet new people, wherever that is, whether it's in an interview or if they meet somebody, in a social situation, or even when they talk to people on a shooting crew. They're trying to get a very quick and accurate picture of who you are. So they maintain sort of a mental inventory in their head. Who do I know that does this thing, does that thing? Who do I know that's very good at doing this thing or that thing? And these are the people that are, they're gathering help and they're soliciting tradesmen to work on their films and so forth. And so if somebody can't get a sense of who you are, what you want, or what direction you're moving in, they may not focus their attention on you, at least not fully, unless you have a way of distinguishing yourself. So I think that the resumes are a good thing to have. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have, is what I always say. So having one of these documents available that you can quickly shoot off an email or something and give people a sense of what you're up to, what your career focus is, and what direction you're trying to take, it helps them, because people in the film industry, it is very competitive, but I do think that people are oftentimes genuinely trying to help you get where you've got to go, because it's kind of like that pay it forward mentality. If you help somebody out and do them a solid and they're successful, they might remember and they might return the favor, or they might open up an opportunity for you that reciprocates the goodwill. And so if they can help you they will, if it's quick and easy to sort of to help you and get you moving along there. But not a lot of people are willing to invest a lot of time if they think that you're not sure what your own focus is. Does that make sense? If you don't know what direction you want to go in, how can I help you get there? You know what I mean? So try to make that resume a working document, and that it kind of signifies you know, put your best foot forward, and then illuminates what your direction is. Okay. Let me go through this little keynote really quick here and touch on the salient points from all of those documents I'm kind of scrolling through. They don't really look like anything at first glance. So we really want to get, oh, you want to look at my, my cinematography 2 opening slide. This is resumes and portfolios. We are the Capstone 1 class. Do I need to go over this? These are your most important dates for the semester. We've passed a number of these already. So the next one, it seems that's going to fall on the calendar for you guys, is withdrawal deadline in October on the 29th. Okay. Resumes for film jobs, the objectives. What are we looking to learn? Learn what to consider when building a resume. Tips for highlighting your experience. Those are built into the documents. Approaches to different designs, types of resumes. But today I want to really talk about reels and portfolios as visual aids. And then we'll talk about how to tailor your resume or your reel to your potential employer, because I think that's really important. You don't want to give a visual effects reel to somebody that you're interviewing for a, you know, directing job or cinematography job, you know, or vice versa. So tailoring your documents to who you're asking for a job is really important. Put your best foot forward. Film credits, make sure you list a producer, director, and supervisor on each of your relevant jobs. That's a really good idea, unless it's such a notable job that people already know. For instance, who the director was or who the cinematographer was. List your credits. Well, they say to list your credits chronologically, but don't be afraid to put any of your experience down. So, you know, I mean, if you were working as a stock person at, you know, Home Depot, I know it doesn't seem like film work, but depending on the type of job you're looking for, you might find a potential employer that finds that experience valuable to them, either in the way you accept responsibility for a job like that. Are you a stickler for paperwork and good with details? Are you reliable? Can you work alone without being, you know, supervised and handheld? Did you have any people under your supervision? Things of that nature can be really, really helpful to an employer who's looking for maybe, you know, a department head or somebody who has to run a crew from a distance. You know, the production office is fairly centralized, and sometimes these folks don't get out and get to the sets or get to the locations very much, but they've got to hire you to do something very, very important to that project. And they need to know that they can trust you with a crew and maybe a truck full of gear, or a shopping budget or whatever, and that you're going to take care of things. So sometimes it seems like irrelevant experience from a normal job application, but in many cases it can be very handy. I'll give you one practical example. The Wilmington film market. So this is Wilmington, North Carolina now. In the mid 80s, Dino De Laurentiis, you guys may know that name from monster movies and stuff in Hollywood. Dino De Laurentiis wanted to make an installment of the King Kong franchise called King Kong Lives, and this is like 1985. And didn't have enough money to do it in Hollywood. There weren't, in 1985, there weren't the sort of third tier satellite markets like there are now. So there was no Austin film market. There was no Albuquerque. There was no New Orleans. There was no Atlanta. It was New York and LA. And in 85, there was the burgeoning and newly established market in Orlando, which lasted for about 12 years. But other than that, there weren't a lot of places to go. And what Dino De Laurentiis was looking for was a place where he could sort of work. He wanted to be isolated because he imagined that this film was going to be some kind of groundbreaking development, and so he wanted to, you know, to maintain some anonymity. He wanted to have a community that was fertile with talent that he could educate and teach how to become filmmakers, and he needed space to work. And what was down there at the time was some property that was adjacent to the Wilmington Regional Airport. Got some really cheap property, enticed monies from the state of North Carolina and later from Carolco to build the North Carolina studios, which then became Carolco Studios in the late 80s in Wilmington, North Carolina. And there were no filmmakers in Wilmington back then. Wilmington was an agrarian, small, very small town on the in the coastal region of North Carolina. But what they had there, because of the Cape Fear River, was a fairly robust community of uh, warehouse workers, dock workers, people that worked with the shipping that was coming in and out of the state, you know, the importing and all of that stuff that was coming in. And so they looked at that potential labor pool and said, yeah, we can work with folks like that. So construction workers, longshoremen, dock workers, forklift operators, all of these people were attracted, employed, and then trained to become the technical labor pool for the North Carolina studios. And none of these people had film backgrounds or film experience to speak of. Of course, critical positions would be brought in from the outside. That's fairly obvious. But there are a number of people, for instance, in the set lighting departments in the early days that came right out of electrical contracting for the local vendors and things, people that were building houses or, you know, doing electrical work, contract electrical work for, uh, unrelated industries, commercial industry, whatever. And these people, you know, very quickly transitioned into the film industry with resumes that had nothing to do with filmmaking. So your experience isn't necessarily worthless. Whatever you're doing, either part-time while you're in college or, you know, right out of college, if you got to start making your college loan payments right away, you know, you might not be able to wait for film work to start making your FAFSA payments. But you know, think about the types of jobs that you get to pay your bills outside of possible film related employment, and try to, you know, look for something that'll be relevant to the kind of work you want to do later when you start getting film opportunities. Okay, I think that's really important. What else have we got here? Tailor your resume. So we're going to talk about how to, you know, sort of focus and key in on the jobs you're looking for and the individuals who are going to be looking at your resume or looking at your document. Okay. Film production resume tips. Do you really want to watch this now? Um, let's watch it later. It's in web courses. You can pick it up, check it out. It's on YouTube. It's probably a lot of stuff you've heard before, but it's going to maybe help you build your homework assignment documents for this week. But in terms of your reel, in addition to that resume document, if you're a cinematographer, a director, maybe an actor, an editor, certainly a visual effects person. In fact, is Nico here? Is Nico? I just saw Nico's video here. All of you folks are going to want some kind of a reel that has, you know, maybe 15, 20, 30-second clips from things that you've worked on that demonstrate your capability, your skill craft, and can show you know, a producer or a production manager what you're capable of. So lots of people need reels, not just cinematographers. Okay. So we're going to talk with somebody who has a lot of experience building these reels, talk to you about what kinds of shots you want, what kinds of shots you don't want to include in a reel. Talk to you about the value of a reel as it's a demonstration or an exhibition of what your talents are, where your talents reside in terms of the kind of work that you're trying to do. In addition to that, websites and business cards are really handy. In fact, Christopher Odom is really good with websites and business cards. When we talk to him in a couple of weeks, I think we'll focus more on that conversation at that time. But these are all part of your professional materials inventory that you should have at the ready. The worst thing in the world is to hear about a job opportunity and not be in a position to go right away and apply for that, or ask for an interview right away and then walk in with up-to-date documents that you can give to a potential employer and get yourself started, get your career jump started. So we're going to talk about the value of all of these documents over the next couple of weeks. So your demo reels are going to be a short video containing clips that highlight all of your all your relevant work experience and your best work experience. So you don't want to put together a reel that has, clips from everything you've ever done. Okay. The whole idea is to keep this to a very brief document that somebody can look at, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, maybe at the outside, and have it represent just the best examples of what you're capable of. Okay. So you really, put a strong foot forward. And here's the notion, and I hope that Ashton will touch on this, but you really should. I know that some of you are really good with like Premiere Pro, or maybe some of you are learning DaVinci Resolve. Aside from a visual effects person who really has a specific skill set that's hard to solicit, if even if you're an editor, I think it's a good idea for somebody else to edit your reel. Okay. And here's why. If you have a hard drive full of clips from stuff that you've worked on, a lot of times it's really hard. You're too close to the source information to be able to look at a set of files and very objectively select the best work that fits well together on a reel and makes for a nice presentation. In other words, you might say, man, I really love these shots from this film. I'm going to put those on my reel. Well, that's great, but if they don't cut well, or if they don't, in context, if they don't sort of fit with the other shots you're putting on your reel, it may not be the best kind of material to include on a reel. What you want is a nice sort of comprehensive visual document that flows nicely as a theme throughout, has really good shots that represent some of your best work, and that they also sort of relate well to one another in terms of a minute and a half or 2 minute presentation. Okay. You don't want a bunch of shots that are very sort of disassociative in some way, so that you're looking at just a series of individual shots that don't have some sense that they contribute to an overall idea that's greater than the sum of its parts. 5 clips that are all very different and don't relate to one another might be okay for a reel, but 5 clips that all seem very similar in what they're saying about you as a creative individual and demonstrating really good examples of your work might be a better focus for a reel. So we'll touch on that sort of topic here in our discussion. The other thing I want to talk to you about really quick. Oh, well, duration, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. This is right out of the coursework, and I think I agree with that. No longer period. I don't know. There's some individuals, when you start getting a little long in the tooth, 2 minutes for your entire career may not be long enough for you to demonstrate what your abilities are. I know some cinematographers, for instance, who might have 3 or 4 reels, and each one of them will be somewhat different, and they'll either be for different kinds of directors that they're looking to work with, or covering different kinds of genres or different kinds of looks that they're capable of. So they may have more than one reel, which then constitutes a total, document of, maybe if you got 4 reels, that could be 8 minutes worth of material. But you don't want to send one producer, all 4 reels, I don't think, unless they're maybe a commercial producer. You want to figure out who that individual is, what kind of movie are they trying to make, or what kind of project are they trying to make, and then send the reel that best fits to that concern. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so let me introduce our guest. I put his bio in web courses for you to check out. His name is Ashton, and he's a professional editor. He's also an educator, so he does teach a lot of these skill sets as well as practicing them as a freelance professional. He has some reels that you can check out on Vimeo, and I've also put this link in web courses with his bio and so forth in the module 2 pages. And so I want to introduce Ashton now and let him speak to you directly. When he's done, we can have a Q&A and some follow-up. And I really hope you enjoy our guest. He's a friend of mine, and I thank him very much for taking the time out of his busy schedule to come and talk with you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ashton, at this point. And let me see if I can't make you a co-presenter here, so that if you have anything you want to show to us from your screen.
Oh, no, I'm not. I don't really have anything to show. It's more just, just talk over my experiences. And it's actually going to bleed a little bit into what you were talking about with resumes too, because it's actually funny how the two actually mixed and mashed for me. So just to give you a little extra background, so I went to film school back in 2006, graduated in 2008. And when I got out, like many people, I wanted to be a director. When I got out, that's what I wanted to do. But of course, when you are just starting out, you're not really getting work as a director. So I had people actually asking me to edit reels for them. And it was only because I actually had Final Cut at the time, Final Cut 7. And so I was actually doing that, especially since they said, oh, I'll pay you some money. I'm like, oh, great, I'll do that, right? So, and I was able to do that, not a problem. And it was actually through editing that I got to learn how to be a director and to do other things. So editing has been very, very good to me, and I still do it to this day. And it's one of my passions. Now, when it comes to a reel, since I've worked on so many people's reels, actors' reels, fellow collaborators' reels, DPs, editors, and things like that, I'm going to be touching upon a lot of the things that Mike had already stated. You, for a reel, especially for yourself or for somebody else, you want to pick out the best of what you have, right? And like Mike said, it is imperative and better to have somebody else actually edit your own reel. Like my reel, I actually hired somebody else to do it. And the reason was simple. There was so much footage and so many great things that I could have used. It would have been like over an hour, because I wanted to keep everything. Oh, this looks great. This looks great. Oh my God, this is lovely. Yes. And it's like, no, that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly. And so it was better to have somebody else look at the material and say, you know what, this looks good. I'm not sure about this. Oh no, don't even do that. just don't. So it was better to have that. And then of course, when I would get the edit, I would give some feedback and everything else, but I trusted the editor on what they were doing, because again, they were trying to help sell me and sell what I wanted to do. Now, of course, I have done a lot of things aside from editing. I've also done some cinematography work. So just like what Mike said, I actually needed to have multiple reels. I needed to have something for my cinematography and for editing, right? So you need to have those things, and you need to have them on standby, because a lot of times that's the first thing people are going to ask whenever you're applying for those positions. They want to see that. They don't really want to see a resume, right? Your resume is your reel. Your previous work is right there visually. That's what I want to see. Right. So now, have I been asked for a resume before? Oh yeah, very recently. And I actually forgot to update it, because here's the thing. When I first started out, I definitely needed a resume. I needed to showcase what I have done, whether it be, student work or non-paid work, whatever the case may be, needed to have that in there. And then gradually over time, I built up my networking, built up my reputation, built up good connections. And then after a while, I didn't even need a resume because people would just contact me and say, hey, I heard of you and, you could do this, let's do something. Okay, great. And then once in a blue moon, I'll be asked, hey, do you have a resume? And I'll be like, man, I haven't needed a resume in a while. Just like Mike, Mike's like, resume, what are you talking about? I've done this, So it's good to have it on hand and to update that. Even if you hardly ever touch it, it's good to update it because you never know. Someone's going to always ask for it. So, like I said, when it comes to reels, you want to showcase the best of you. It is a representation of you as a person, you as your work and what you're capable of doing, right? And it doesn't matter what your field is. And I can also say that if you end up, doing reels as like a profession just for other people, it's a great gig. It really is. It's a lot of fun. They put, your clients put a lot of faith in your judgment in terms of what makes them look good. And especially actors. Oh boy, actors. Oh, the one thing with working with actors is that it could be stressful only because they get stressed out about trying to get footage for their reel. Because some filmmakers are just sometimes really drop the ball, don't give them anything, or if they give them something, you'll get, one clip that's like 1080p, you get another one that's, 4K, then another one that's standard definition, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to make all this work? It's all over the place in resolution. And you can't blame the actor for that. That's on the other person giving them the footage. And then you have to make it work, right? But that's part of your job. Now, the length of a reel. I have seen reels go for quite a long time, up to the 2-minute mark. But I got to be honest with you, since I've gone through the process of hiring people for gigs and so forth, anything over up to 2 minutes is a complete waste, in my opinion. If you can lock it in within like a minute or less, perfect. Think of it as like a trailer, the shorter, the better. Just, short and sweet, just give me the best things of everything that I need to see, and I get a good representation of you. Anything longer, I don't need to see, and that also applies to a resume, because I don't know how it's now, but when I was taught about a resume should be one page, everything. Should not be multiple pages that I look at and it's like I have to fuss through all this stuff. One clean page that has everything. Okay. So try to keep it to a minimum, right? Because they're going through people like crazy. Okay, this looks good. All right, next person, right? So both things, short and sweet.
I thought of a question I can ask before I forget. You were talking about you working with multi formats. Have you worked with any of that new upresing software that's out there? I have a friend who's a producer editor out in Los Angeles, and he's working on a documentary right now, a long form documentary that has source material that's now spanning 3 decades. And he sent me some clips of some of this stuff where he has taken standard definition footage from the 80s and upresed it and reformatted it to fit on a timeline that I think he has upresed as far as 6K to see where it falls apart. But I think the finished timeline, I think, is a 4K timeline. And I've seen some pretty interesting results. I just wondered if you'd had the opportunity to work with any of that.
No, but I would actually like to. I would really like to be able to do that. I haven't had to do anything in that area. I've usually just worked with whatever has been shot. I've never had to deal with archival type footage. But that would be interesting to actually do. I would like to try to do that because I've always wondered how do you do that, right? Because you can't do it the standard way of just putting the clip in the timeline and then just increasing the size, because you're just going to lose quality the moment you do.
Yeah, it's got some pretty interesting voodoo working behind the scenes with the metadata. He sent me some pictures where, I see a wide frame of something, and then he'll send me another ISO of like, he sent me a house in a landscape, in a winter landscape. And it was like taken from the road, and there was like the yard, and there was like this weathered house sitting on the top of this little knoll, and there was a fence kind of half buried in the snow, and there was some stuff in the yard that was kind of peeking out of the snowbanks and stuff, and there was like a mailbox kind of leaning out of a snowbank, and so that was the master shot. And then he sent me like a clip, an ISO of just the mailbox, like blown up and with all of the detail and everything. And I mean, you could see the wood grain on the post holding the mailbox up, I mean, just it blew my mind
What
what
was
was
it shot in
possible.
originally?
The original stuff was NTSC standard def. So,
Oh, okay.
not only did he up-res it and clean it up, but I mean, it was as though it was never standard def to begin with. It was really wild. The
I would
computer has some way of interpreting detail, and through it's AI based apparently. It kind of knows, if it's like looking at a piece of wood, it kind of knows about wood grain, and how if it can see this suggestion of a swirly grainy pattern, it takes that data and interpolates it and fills it in with new data. It's not just line doubling or pixel doubling, binning, I guess they call it. It's actually creating new data to fit in there. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow, why does anybody need to buy a $40,000 red helium camera anymore to shoot 8 or 12K if you can do this with your, OG pocket cinema camera,
yeah.
just interesting, really interesting. I know that's kind of a sidebar, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
No, it's a good sidebar because that's something that I would like to touch upon, just to, better my skills as an editor. Because here's the thing, guys, just as a side note, and Mike has probably already brought this up numerous times, but even when you're done and you've got your degree and everything, you're never done learning. You're never done learning. You're always going to have to, upgrade yourself, just like the software always upgrades with, every single month, it seems like, or cameras upgrade all the time. And you're like, oh, great. Didn't I just get a 4K camera? Oh, no, now there's the 8K. And it's like, okay, but oh, God, okay. What's the new feature? Oh, it does this, it does that. And you have to teach yourself, because you got to keep yourself up to date with everything. Because guess what? If you want that job, you're going to need to know that stuff. Because I've worked with a lot of clients that are like, you better know your stuff, because that's why I hired you. I didn't hire you to babysit or to teach you. You should know this already, and that's it. And they just leave you alone. And if you talk enough tech to them, they just walk away like, oh, okay, you got it. I'll leave you alone.
Kind of part and parcel with what you just said. I know from a camera person's standpoint, what a dumpster fire technology is in terms of being an owner operator, because I remember one year I bought the new whiz bang Panasonic camera, and it cost me like 17,000. And this was, in 2007 dollars. And it seems like you get maybe a year out of that technology, and then it's no longer the darling of the dance. When you're working out there as a freelancer, they all wanted to rent my camera when they hired me as a shooter. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, do you have a red camera, or do you have a this or a that, whatever the new flavor of the day was. And suddenly that $18,000 investment is sitting on the shelf collecting dust. How does that work with computers and the kind of work that you're doing? Are you on the same kind of steep and rapid hamster wheel of equipment becoming obsolete, or what are the ages of your computers, and what are you able to get away with technology wise before you've got to upgrade your own package?
It all comes down to the operating system. Like, I can tell you right now, and this is a big fess up, I have a late 2012 iMac computer, and it cannot install the newest operating software, system at all. Cannot do it. It reached its certain peak, very much like cell phones. Cell phones at some point, especially with the Apples, if you have a certain one and if you try to put in the newer operating system, it just will like, no, I can't work with this. Sorry. Which then means that phone is nothing more than just a MP3 player. Good, but who wants that? But what's interesting is that some certain software will still function on the computer at the current operating system that I have. And it's really, the other thing too is that nobody really tells you like, hey, be aware, if you don't have this and this is updating itself, it's not going to work with this at all. Like, I'm not really going to know if Premiere or any of the Adobe products that I have on my computer are going to still function if I try to do an update. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it'll probably just stay at whatever version it is and say, you cannot update any further. You're stuck at this version, which is fine because at least with Adobe, they keep the older versions there so you can still use them, which is lovely. Thank you, Adobe, for that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to work with equipment vendors that understand the legacy needs of professionals. I think that was the whole reason why Apple kind of folded in on itself in terms of the Final Cut 7 to Final Cut 8 transition. And they realized that they were focusing on a market share that wasn't buying as much equipment as consumers were. And so that they came out with Final Cut 10, which was more consumer oriented and supposedly more intuitive to use for somebody who was just getting into the business and didn't really have all of the cutting skills that somebody that was required to have to work in Final Cut 7. And I think they realized that the consumer base was spending more money than the professionals. And so they kind of abandoned the professionals a little bit for a long time until they got, until the professionals started squawking about it.
Oh, they did, because I tried out that newer version and within not even a minute, I was like, nope, this is not my final, cut. This is not my final cut anymore. It's done. Sorry. And then the other thing too, with Apple, what they did, unlike Adobe, is that those programs that you had before, if you update the operating system, some of them don't carry over anymore. So then that makes them obsolete and then you can't use it anymore. So if you were comfortably using Final Cut 7 and wanted to keep doing that, but then you updated to the operating system, you'll get that nice, opaque, 0 with the slash in it, and like, nope, can't use it anymore. Thanks, appreciate it. And what if that was your only, source of income, was that one program? Thank you, appreciate it. Now you have to find something else. At least with Adobe, like I said, they let you use the older versions. So in case you have a computer and you can't afford to update yet, you can still use that and still do everything you need to do. So thank you for that.
That's why when I choose a piece of equipment like a camera, for instance, sometimes it's a really neat idea to go with a camera that's new and has some interesting new features, but it's from a company that's not notorious for customer service, and there's one particular big box company that I can think of, who shall remain nameless, who has a really crappy reputation for customer service, and so I've always, when I find a brand that's serviceable and the products are good and they're consistent and they're not coming out with something every 6 months that's going to screw me when I buy their whiz bang model and then I can't rent it because there's a new version out that everybody wants now and they don't want mine anymore. So I try to pick very carefully amongst the vendors that support me as an owner operator, because they understand that, if my economics aren't solid and reliable, then I'm not going to buy a new piece of gear every 5 years. Like, that's usually that's kind of the time frame that I seem to be on. It's like every 5 years I start looking at certain pieces of gear and retiring them and moving to a newer version. Thankfully, not everything that I use has to be on a 5-year time frame. Like I got some lenses that are 30 years old, and I would never think of getting rid of them because they have certain qualities that I like that I don't see demonstrated in new models of lenses. But in terms of cameras, it seems like I get maybe 5 years out of a camera and then it's kaput. Then I got to look for a new one. So
But the thing with
Black
the
Magic, Panasonic, those companies have never let me down, you know. And even now I've got the Ursa Mini 4.6K, not even the G1 or the G2. Of course, the G1 is kind of the same camera. But there was still updates right up until late last year for the Ursa Mini 4.6K. I don't have the newest version of their Blackmagic Raw in the 4.6K standard body, but I have DCI 4K Raw, you know, which is actually the industry standard anyway. You know, Cinema DNG Raw is the cinema standard, not Blackmagic Raw, not yet. So in that sense, even though my camera's release date was 2016 with a late fulfillment of 2017, making it a 3-year-old camera for all intents and purposes, it's, for me, it's still a workhorse that makes a beautiful picture. And I know if I had anything short of a raw issue with the camera, that Blackmagic would be able to help me solve the problem. So I go with manufacturers that support me as a working professional because I can't afford to buy gear every year. That's silly.
Mhm. No, I agree. I agree. And going back to what you were saying about lenses, there are plenty of companies that actually make adapters just for those types of lenses for
Oh,
people.
sure.
And there's been like a resurgence of like using older lenses that are like, oh wow, this lens from the 60s, like, will this work? It's like, yeah, just they make adapters for this stuff because people know they have them and they want to use them. And those things, like you said, lenses, you know, from back in the day, those things were workhorses and they still are. You take good care, you know, just like a car, if you take good care of it, it'll work until it can finally kaput. But I have like Zeiss lenses that are just like, oh my God, I could beat them to death and they'll still be like, yeah, bring it on. That all you got.
Yeah.
Unlike a camera, you can't really beat up too much. Lenses, you probably could.
To me, cameras are fashion. You know, they're inspiration in the moment, but they're changing so much, and people's opinions about cameras, their ergonomics, their nuanced features. You know, the
But
camera
here's the thing.
changing sometimes based on the editing systems.
Here's the thing about cameras, and I know you and I have actually personally have had this talk, is that, yeah, they can come out with a newer camera that does 8K, but it's like, okay, take a step back for a minute, guys. All right, think about this. Can your computer actually edit 8K? Probably not. Do you have graphics card that can handle that? Probably not. Can you stream 8K? No. Can you do anything can you actually make Blu-rays with that? No, because that's beyond HD. And there has not been made anything for ultra HD burning just for us. We could do Blu-rays, but we can't do, you know, ultra
2K.
2K, but that's about it. That's about it. You can't stream it, you can't showcase it. You can't do anything with 8K. So yeah, that's great to shoot on 8K, but what? You're gonna have to downscale it to like, 4K, and then guess what? You just lost out on like half of the resolution just because you have to scale it down. You might as well have just shot it in 4K.
Yeah, because the downscaling is linear anyway. It's not AI software based, so it's not using software interpolation to figure out how to compress that data down to a different resolution. It's just going in and taking out, regular intervals of raw data, which, could end up degrading your image significantly, I think.
Yeah.
Having said that, and talking about cameras and everything, I had a question here jotted down for you about wearing multiple hats And, you know, can you just be an editor anymore, or do you also have to be a colorist or a visual effects artist or a post-production sound engineer in addition to being an editor, or can you simply be an editor at this point and make a living?
That depends on the job that you have and the employer, because I'll tell you what, when I went to school, it was taught into my brain and everybody else's brain that if you are an editor, that is all you're doing. If you're a sound guy, that's all you're doing. If you're a camera guy, that's all you're doing. And guess what? Because the technology had improved and was cheaper, I worked at a job and the guy was like, "Hey, I need you to be a predator."
Yeah, I got that
I
noted.
was like, "Predator? Like, are you talking like the dread and the no, no, not that one." I wish that would have been pretty cool, but no, a predator.
Who here in the audience knows what a predator is?
Yep, shaking head, Keith. Yep, I see that.
It's an acronym. Is
A
acronym the
lion?
right word? I think acronym might be the right word. It's a portmanteau, certainly. That is a nuanced combination of predator, director, editor. I mean, producer, director, editor,
Yep.
predator, right?
Mm.
So they want you to produce the thing, direct the thing, and edit the thing. And when they say edit, I think sometimes they're also alluding to the possibility that you're also shooting the damn thing. So now you're wearing 4 hats at the same time. And does your salary reflect that?
No, no, they pay because I'll tell you what, the job that I had, and again, it varies depending on where you go and who hires you, right? I was working at a mom and pop type place, so they could pay one base, amount. Now, did I mind? No, because I needed the job. So, and it was in my field. So wonderful. But when you're going out to go do a shoot and you're the only shooter, guess what? You are carrying all the equipment and then have to be expected to keep track of your shots, the audio at the same time, lug everything back to the office, and then get right to work editing. And guess what? If you screwed up, you know exactly who to blame, because you know exactly, you were there. You were the one who shot it. And not only that, but you're also asked to make sure about the sound, do some post on sound, not anything major. Because again, it goes back to the old thing. If you shot it right the first time, you barely have to do anything except little tweaks. So for me, I would just do little tweaks, maybe increase the volume a little bit, but that's about it. Other times, then I would have to really try to fix, somebody else's mistake. And then let's throw in motion graphics onto that, as if you don't know anything about motion graphics or how to do any of that. It's like, lower third, you want me to create a custom lower third here. And it's like, but I'm just all right, I'm getting paid. I might as well, it's one of those situations where you have to like learn on the spot and try to figure it out and just do the best you can. But like I said, it depends on who hires you and where you go. Some places it's like, no, you are editor. That's it. That's all you're expected to do. Do not ask for anything else. Right. And also, if you're an independent contractor, doing your own work, you have to make that very, very clear whenever a client approaches you about doing a project for them. Because if they specify certain things, you need to be able to clarify either you could do it, and it'll cost this much extra to do it, or this is all you're getting, and then somebody else is doing it. Because I had somebody say, oh, originally you're just going to be editing this episode. And I was like, okay, so I'm not doing any sound cleanup or anything like that. Then I was told I had to do something else, do some actual, coloring and things like that. And I'm like, that contract that I signed did not state that that's what my job was. Yes, I could do it, but that's not what my contract stated. I was just to do a rough edit and that's it. Anything else, you need a new contract.
Yeah, and
They
in the
made a
middle of a
big
job,
stinker about it. They made a big stink about it, but it's like, well, you should have thought of that. That's not my job. I had asked them ahead of time, and apparently they just changed their mind. So you got to be
I,
careful when people start asking more of you than originally asked. Okay.
Good to
Because
plan these things ahead of time.
yes, as much as possible. Also, think about this too. If you're doing a video or an edit for a client, and you have already done an edit, and then you send it to them, they could keep coming back with revision after revision after revision after revision to the point where it's like, is this ever going to end? You have to specify ahead of time, you get 3 revisions or whatever amount you want. 3 revisions. So it tells them, hey, I got three times. Anything over that is extra.
yeah, I used to give clients three versions. You get the original submission, and then you're going to get a set of notes from them, and then that lends itself to a version 2 submission, and then one revision on that version 2, which becomes your third version, and that's it. Anything else, it's a new contract with new stipulations and new rates, based on the fact that you've already,
Because
packaged the thing 3
people
times.
because people are just, sometimes never satisfied. And it's like, you know what? I thought that was done, but why don't we try this instead? And like, no, we're not doing that. We're past 3 now.
Yeah.
You
So
want to
what
pay
we're talking about is the difference between a couple of different worlds. And this is why I cherish my union background when I hear stories like this, because I was also, I mean, I went to film school very briefly and then I dropped out. But I mean, in my day when I was an apprentice and I was just coming up in the industry, it was all about specialization. And this is the job that you do, and you don't wear several hats, because not only does it not reflect well to clients, they're like, well, what do you do? Do you cut, shoot? What do you do? But also that the idea is that when you became a professional, especially if you came into the professional industry through one of the trade unions, was that you become part of an economic ecosystem where there are other people that are making a living, and there are other people that are moving in, moving up, and moving on. And the idea that somebody does 3 or 4 things kind of evoked or elicited reactions of, well, this person's just greedy and trying to take all the work for themselves and don't leave anything for anybody else. And so the prevailing wisdom was, you picked a specialization not just to distinguish yourself in the crowd, but also to, as a response to the knowledge that there were lots of people in the business, especially if you're in a small market, that are trying to make a living at this. And the idea that, you want to support the notion of a community of professional service providers instead of one go-to guy all the time, because when that guy's busy, then nobody else can get anything done. So it's interesting. I don't really, the unions support the specialization mentality, but it's the small individual sort of mom and pop boutique style production companies, especially in small, non-ranked production towns. Like Orlando is no longer ranked, I don't think, because there's not enough work going on here. In a place like this, you might get a job at a production house that, yeah, they want you to be chief cook and bottle washer, and they want to pay you, $17 an hour, $15 an hour. And I think that is a form of exploitation. I think that if, every craft, according to the AFL-CIO under the IATSE banner, has a market value. That's one of the nice things about working on jobs that have union contracts and stuff, is that market value is negotiated with those employers, and they don't, they usually don't mess with the rates if they know that they want good people that are going to give them, the best possible result. Because when a client has a multi-million-dollar deal at stake, I think the dumbest thing they can do is try to get a bargain basement editor or camera person to shoot the product that they're going to make millions off of. I mean, it may only make sense that they invest the proportional and logical amount of money in the outcome that they rely on to sell this product or make this deal, whatever it is that they're doing. And that brings us back to the conversation of the reel, right? So the reel is all about showing people what your value is. And so if you go in and ask for, if you go in and ask to edit for a mom and pop shop at $50 or $100 a day, but you've got a dynamic reel, you are grossly underselling yourself, because a really good editor in a professional context working on notable work that finds its way onto television or major broadcast, either on the web or on TV, your daily worth is a lot higher than that. And your reel will reflect that, I think, and it'll become obvious to an employer, because like Ashton said, you can lie on a resume. All it is words on a page, and most employers aren't willing to research your resume to any degree that's going to tax them of their time. They're either going to get a sense of whether or not you're embellishing your resume, or they're just going to take it at face value and believe you and then put you to work. And then you run the risk of, if you're not truly qualified, being discovered, or they look at your work and say, wow, we're paying you a lot of money for this. So that reel really is your strongest advocate for your ability, for your talent. And so it's your best foot that you can put forward, better than a paper document that says, oh yeah, I did all this stuff, but we don't know what that looks like. We don't have anybody, speaking on your behalf to say, yeah, he was here and he did this work and he did a great job. The reel, I think, is going to speak for itself, I think.
Think of it as a visual business card.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Don't have a card, it's like, watch that. That's me too.
Yeah, I think that's a great way.
A lot of times you put in your contact info on there anyway, so it's like the same thing.
And then get it up there on a website.
If you're smart, and if you guys are smart, you'll put your demo on your phone, and then your phone is your business card as well, because you can be like, oh, here, you want to see this? Boom. I've done that multiple times. Like, oh, here you go. And I've showed it to somebody, and guess what? Within a week, I was called back, said, hey, I remember you showed me that thing. I'd like to hire you for something. Who would have thought putting it on my phone would have helped, and not on a link, but actually on the phone itself?
Oh, so you don't even need a Wi-Fi connection if you're going to.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think of that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
I come from the day and age where, as a photographer, I can remember having, I think I had five or six leather bound portfolios with 8x10s or 11 by, I had one that was 11 by 14. And that was a lot of stuff to lug around, so if you went out soliciting for work, you went to one or two client stops in a day to show your reel to an office manager or somebody that was working at a studio you were trying to work for. And then you had to hump all that stuff around with you. And then I remember when the tablets came out, I was like, I know what that's for. And I put all my portfolios on a tablet that I could throw in my briefcase, and have it, and just set it on somebody's desk or on a table and hit play, and they could look at all my stuff on a tablet like that. So
Yep.
now we got YouTube. I suppose you can give them a link, but there's nothing like putting a screen right in somebody's face and saying, here it is, this is what I do. I think it's a great idea.
Without a Wi-Fi connection.
Without a Wi-Fi. Yeah, so you can do it in an elevator, right? I'm talking to my writing students right now about elevator pitch.
Here's my elevator pitch.
Yeah, here's my elevator pitch. Yeah.
And I didn't even have to say a word. Beautiful.
Yeah, let the pictures speak for themselves.
It's actually a good idea, pretty creative too.
I mean, it seems so simple of like, why not put your stuff on there if you can? I mean, yes, back in the day when they were still iTunes, you could put up your videos through the home video, and then that's how you got it on your phone. You could still do that now. It's just you have to go through the whole Finder thing since they got rid of iTunes. But it still can be done. You can still do it. and you can just export your video for the phone resolution. And so you're not going to lose any quality if you do that. And then you're good to go. And it's shown right there and then. You don't have to do anything. And it doesn't, all your videos, whatever you want to have on there, they don't take up a lot of space. They really don't. And then you can be very selective, like, oh, this person wants to see something dramatic. Okay, boom, there you go. Oh, somebody wants to see this. Okay, there. Oh, I worked on that. Here you go. Here's a sample. You could be Johnny on the spot right there and then.
What if you don't have a lot of footage to show off yet? Like, what if you have mostly just like one or two things?
You can then
from a
this
long time
actually,
ago or something.
then this actually falls into an area that I've talked to actors about. If they don't have a reel, you make a reel. So like I've told actors, it's like, just like what Mike said, people, when you're looking at a resume, they don't necessarily look back at like, oh, to verify, oh, that's where you actually work. And let's be honest, us filmmakers, we tend to, if we see someone's reel and it said this production, the title and this production, I'm not going up onto whatever site and on the web just to verify that that film actually existed. I've actually told actors, well, listen, I can make you a reel. We could just shoot this scene, put some dummy, title and production. No one's going to be searching that. They're going to be focusing on you and your performance. That's the whole point. It's your reel. We're making your reel. You may not have actually, acted in something, but we can make it look like you did now, and then that could help you later on. Same thing for you. So you could actually be doing a side business of making reels for actors, and then you can use that for yours. Boom. Both of you get something out of it at the same time. You get footage that you can use for your reel, and they get footage they can use for theirs. Win-win situation.
I think there's two.
And also,
Right.
and you can also do what Mike does. Mike loves to just go out and just shoot random stuff.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah, he loves to do that. I know many people that love to do that. Why don't you go and do that? Go shoot just random stuff that you want to, just like when people are testing cameras, they go shoot close-ups of flowers or, all that other stuff. Why not go do that?
Really good reason
Because
for
you're
that.
not only getting footage for your reel, but you're also playing around with the camera equipment and getting to know it better. Because,
Yeah, there's lots of benefits to it.
Because
But I mean,
you cannot get a camera or anything like that and expect that it's just going to do exactly what you want it to do because they show a nice image of like, oh, this is what it can do. Well, yeah, that's lovely, but it takes an operator to make that lovely picture. The camera can do that, but it can't do that without the operator. You
here's
need
the
to know
thing about cameras. The people that are worried about cameras, I think, and concerned with cameras are not the people that I end up working for. The people that I end up working for are people that they have a style in mind. They have storyboards that they've worked on. They have a concept that they want their project to reflect. And so the question about, what do you do if your images aren't current? Well, the thing about, all right, you gave the the example of going out and shooting a flower, right? A very succulent dewdrop dripping off the end of a beautiful yellow sunflower. If that image is stylized and dynamic and saturated and well composed, doesn't matter if you shot that image 10 years ago or yesterday, right? They don't necessarily know the answer to that question. But if it's an amazing shot, an amazing shot's an amazing shot. And so that's what the kinds of things that I would, put on a reel for as a cameraman. But you want to mix that with verifiable imagery that shows that you did something last week or last month or last year that keeps you relevant and keeps you in a contemporary conversation, whether it's a product they recognize or an actor they recognize. So I always tried to put like, if I had marquee actors in the footage I was trying to cut into a reel, I'd make sure that they found their way into that reel so that a client or, a potential client that I'm going to work for sees that I've worked with XYZ talent and how they represent a certain tier of business. And so if I'm shooting for a job within that economic tier, and I have actors on my reel that reflect that same sort of status, that I'm a good candidate for that job, but that's not necessarily the only way they're going to determine your applicability, but it doesn't hurt. It sometimes helps to have some notable product or people in your reel that can speak to your level of experience in the industry. I was going to ask you about, I had some notes here. The other point that you made was we're talking about how they're not going to research your resume. They're just going to take it at face value, or they're going to go with a gut feeling. The other thing they might do is, so let's say you're interviewing for an editing job, but you weren't the first choice for this producer. The producer's normal editor is on another job. They're busy, right? So then they get your resume on the desk, right? And they're looking at your credentials and they think to themselves, man, I'm not going to spend all day looking up all these references to find out if this guy's on the level. I'm just going to call my regular editor and see if he even knows this person and if he can speak to the validity of this resume, favorably enough to make me feel confident to give this guy a try. And then if he works out, I've got an A call and a B call for future projects. Or if he doesn't work out, I know that, I needed to do a little bit better job of vetting my potential service providers. But that speaks to that idea that, don't be greedy within a community and try to take all the work by trying to do more than, one or two specializations, because word of mouth oftentimes is a far better advocate for your getting hired or getting looked over than a paper document. If you've got other people in the industry and maybe peers that also do the same job for a living that can speak to your skill set, to the kind of person you are, to your affordability, whatever it is, and they can offer that additional testimony on your behalf. That's really, really important. But if you become, kind of a lone wolf to where you're out there, grabbing the best rates for yourself or undercutting people on rates, that's even worse. You're not going to get many people to speak for you when it comes to networking, and that's really a really important concept to remember. That's what we're kind of referring to when we talk about the brotherhood in the IATSE, the International Brotherhood of Stage Mechanics or set lighting technicians or cameramen or editors, whatever it is. They talk about brotherhood, and the idea is, you're not the only editor in town, but will other editors speak well of you or ill of you when a producer's looking to hire? This is really, really important as well.
Yeah. And let me tell you, just to piggyback on what Mike said, a lot of times too, if someone comes to you to do something and you're unavailable, a lot of times they'll ask you, hey, do you know of someone who would be good at this? They will take your opinion rather than look at resumes or anybody else's. They will take your opinion at face value and say, hey, this person is great. Yeah, I can't do it, but this person will definitely do a great job. And that done deal, that person has the job automatically. If they can do it, job's theirs.
Absolutely.
All because of networking.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a really good story. So I worked with this woman in Lake County. Okay. And I was messaged by someone saying, oh, I just ran for local sheriff's office and I won, and I need video content. And I'm like, oh man, I personally would love to do that, but I was not anywhere near where she lived. But I knew of somebody else that is down the street that I worked with. And I told her, I said, I can't do it, but this person I've worked with, she's awesome. She can do shooting, editing, podcasts, she knows her stuff. She would love, I bet she would love to do it. And guess what? She was asked on the spot just because I referenced her and said, oh, I was told by so-and-so. That's it, done. And it's
really
nice
does
to
work that way.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for the reference. I said, listen, and I told her honestly, said I would have done it if I were closer, but I wasn't. So it's better you do it. You're there. You're just as capable.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's why I didn't have to use a resume for 3 decades, because that's really good.
That's why I haven't had to use one for years, just because it was so-and-so knew you and this and that. And it wasn't until like, what, maybe a couple weeks ago that I was asked for a resume. And I'm like, what? What? Like I hadn't had to touch that in ages. I just was like, here's the work and that's it.
Yeah. Which is kind of counterintuitive.
I didn't have to look for the work. The work found me, as Mike would probably say. He didn't have to look for the work. The work found him.
But that's the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
I have sent out tons of resumes though. After I retired and I was looking for teaching work, for instance, I mean, I've sent out tons of resumes in that capacity. But as far as my film work, it was really about people being willing to recommend me when an opportunity came about. You know, if it was my friends or if it was my union, because a lot of times the unions get solicitations from producers and stuff. We need an editor, so they call the editors local and they speak to the business agent there and they say, who do you got that's available that can cut for me for the next 2 weeks on a TV show? Our normal editor is in the hospital with appendicitis, you know, and you get a call from the local, from the call steward that you know, sends you on a job. And that's really sort of that's the ethos of the union speaking now and saying, you know, you can call the union, and if you get a union editor, you're going to get a good technician. But if it's not the case where you're talking about a union job or a union contract, other editors, if they're willing to speak highly of you and recommend you when they can't do a job, is really key to your success, I think. So you want to know other editors. You don't want to be an isolated individual trying to work in a market. That's why you should try to go to bigger markets where there's a lot of activity going on, so that there's room for more than 1 or 2 guys in town to get this kind of business, you know? So can I ask you, without getting too specific, the kinds of work that you do now, are you an hourly kind of hire, a daily hire, by the job hire? Do you work 1099, which is you work as a contractor and you don't have FICA taxes taken out of your pay, and you do your own self-taxation and your own deductions and stuff? Or do you work W-2, working for a company as an employee? What kind of work are you looking for now as an editor? And then what might that kind of work be worth for people who are looking for this kind of career path?
First of all, I'll take all the work that I can get, just because I love doing it. I love being able to be a storyteller. That's one of my passions. That's one of the skills you need to have as an editor. If you're not a storyteller, you're not an editor. You need to be a storyteller. Doesn't matter what it is, even for a new story, you got to be a storyteller. And I've even worked gigs for my old boss. When at that mom and pop place, he'll always call me up and say, hey, I've got some stuff in Orlando. You're close by. Are you available? And it'll be, you know, W-2s, and I'd have to handle all that. But I call my own rate. So before, when I worked with him, when I was hired by him, he paid me the hourly rate, and that was whatever he wanted to give me. That was it. Right. Yes, I did get a raise after a certain time, but it was maxed out at a certain point. Now I'm making actually more on my day rate, which is what I negotiated with him on my day rate, than I did when I was actually just doing all that stuff at the same time. I charge him way more now, but he's way more accepting of it, just because and that's why, and the reason he goes to me is because he knows the quality of the work that I do. Because I worked with him before. I didn't leave at a, you know, in a bad way. It was mutual and, still very respectful. And he still sends me out for gigs in Orlando from time to time. So I do W-2s through him. He gives me my day rate that I asked for, and there's no negotiating on that whatsoever. So it's whatever I want, and that's it. And I give him whatever it is he wants me to do. So if he just wants me to go shooting, that's this day rate. If he wants me to go shooting and editing, this is what I do for this. Now, I also will do by a per project basis, depending on what it is. Usually I do I do that for reels, actors reels and stuff like that. And then if I have someone who wants to throw me work all the time, continuously, then I'll do that as an hourly thing. I won't do it by a day rate. I'll do it by an hourly. So I'll get paid per hour that I edit. So I actually go through all the different areas that you mentioned, Mike.
It sounds like, though, you're advocating more for being a freelancer than being a staffer, because your earning potential is higher, but your risk level, it seems like it's also higher.
It's true, only because when I was a staffer, I was limited to what I could get. I couldn't really negotiate. And again, that depends on where you go. I was in a mom and pop area. Mom and pop does not have as much money as such like a studio or whatever. So you can't really call the shots on that. So I would say go for whatever it is you are comfortable with doing. If you want some more security, go for the staffer position. If you feel like you can handle everything on your own, then do the W-2.
Yeah, I think that staff positions unilaterally, I think, generally pay less than freelance positions. And the reasoning is, hey, you get a paycheck every week. So, you have the job security. You're not out there working week to week, hand to mouth, constantly, burning shoe leather looking for a job. You're always going to have a place to come and do stuff. But that comes at a lower price point.
Right, especially since we talked about that, a lot of these places want you to be multifaceted. You're not just the editor, you're not just the shooter, you're not just the graphics person. You are all of that combined. And you're also, I hate to say this too, but you also have to be a computer person as well. You have to be somewhat tech savvy. Because a lot of these people, like the one that I worked with, he didn't know nothing about computers. He just took our recommendations, and then anything that occurred, he would go to us and say, well, how do we fix it?
You became
And
the
so
IT guy.
we had to be like our own Mac specialists and like, okay, research this and then figure this out. And then, problem solve. So you're not just problem solving, like when you're editing, you're not just problem solving story beats and stuff like that. You're also got to be able to problem solve tech issues that come up.
Yeah, the thrills of being a house guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Exactly.
I don't know. I remember being really, really young and thinking, my God, I had just gotten off of my first made national commercial spot. I think it was a Texaco commercial or something. And, at that point, I'd done a lot of student films and a couple of low budget local things. And I got off this commercial and I thought, man, that was great. I made good money and I met people and that was a lot of fun. But it only lasted 3 days. Where am I going to get 362 other days to fill on my calendar? How am I going to do this? How do I string these jobs together? And freelancing was very frightening. But I was in a town where staffers were pretty much non-existent because I wasn't in a tier 1 production city. I wasn't in LA, New York, or Chicago. So there were no staffers. Every production company that was, say in Orlando in the mid to late 80s was, lucky to be in business at all, fly by night productions, because there wasn't a lot of work here and it was really, really hard to stay employed. And so freelancing was a scary idea. So a staff job seems like a comforting shelter for a market where, you might go 1 week on and 3 weeks off, working in the industry. And so you got to scale your life to those economics, and you constantly kind of by the phone or constantly, on the phone looking for work. And so your days are spent either hunting for a job or on the job. And you don't have any sense of days off or how your calendar is going to play out. So there's a lot to be said for a staff job if you can get it. Just understand the money might not be as great as working freelance. Once you get your ball rolling, I think freelance can be just as comfortable, in fact, more comfortable than a staff job, because you feel less restricted. You can turn work down. If you don't want to do it, don't ask for the job. Whereas a house job, if they bring in a dog food commercial and you're just not about that at all and you don't want to be a part of it, you got to do it anyway because you're the house guy, you know. So you get a little bit more flexibility in the work that you pick and choose once your ball is rolling. In other words, when your ball's not rolling, when you're first starting out, we used to say we become a credit whore. I'll take whatever job I get my hands on because I need to put lines on a resume to show people that I've done a bunch of stuff and that I'm employable and that I know things. And so in the beginning, I'm not talking about in the very beginning. In the very beginning, take whatever you can get, man, especially if it pays, and almost whatever it pays, so that you can get credits and work under your belt and job experience. But that situation really is only going to be, I think, maybe the first 3 years of your career. And I think after that, I think you can start developing some connections and some clients that'll call you back. And life is not as tenuous and upended after you've got 3 or 4 years in whatever aspect of the business you're going to be doing. Unless you got relatives in, then you're made. But if you're a person, an individual looking to break in, I think the first couple of years are going to be sort of scary no matter what. And you just have to weather that. You've got to get through it. Part of how you get through it is you stay in touch with your network. You keep your skills up. So even if you don't have anything to cut something for yourself, cut a buddy's reel, cut a new reel for yourself, cut something. And a lot of people put these sort of these edits up on YouTube that are edit essays where they take a bunch of footage from something and they re-chop it, or they analyze some aspect of the sequence the way the editors did it and they show you an alternate edit. Do something like that, to demonstrate your skills and stuff, but don't go idle, with what you're trying to do, to keep your own skills sharp, to keep your morale up, and to keep putting something out there that someone can stumble across if they're looking for an editor. If you're not putting anything out there and you're not practicing and you're not known, that's kind of the worst position to be in.
And you can put that to every single area in the industry.
Yeah, not just cutting, but
you want to be a camera guy and you don't practice. Well, there you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to know a lot of grips that when there wasn't movies to work on, they'd go out and frame houses. They'd work on construction crews and it's funny because, in the old days, they used to call grips hammers. That was their nickname. Electricians were juicers and grips were hammers, and a hammer's a hammer, whether it's on a movie set or on a job site building somebody's house. If you're working with tools and you're outside and you're working physically to keep yourself in shape and you're using the same kinds of tools you'd use on a movie job, you're reading blueprints, you're accountable to a job supervisor, you're running a crew or whatever, and you're taking a concept on paper and manifesting in a physical object that you built by hand. That's all good experience, and then you take that with you back the next time you go on a movie, and you can stay sort of limber and razor sharp in that respect. So if you're a cutter, I think you just got to look for stuff to keep cutting, keep chopping, chop. Okay, you said something really important a few beats back about if you're going to be an editor, you got to be a storyteller. And I agree with that 100%. Not only the notion that an editor is one of those career paths that ultimately lead to director. But from my own personal experience, I can tell you that you definitely don't want to work with an editor that has no sense of story. And I can give you one prime example. So the first documentary that I ever shot, um, I went out with a partner, and we were very inspired by our subjects and by the locations we were shooting in, and the concepts that we were trying to deal with. And we had so much we were trying to say that I went out and I shot everything, you know. I mean, tons and tons of footage and different moments and different narratives for the images that I was creating. And we had tons of footage. And then we had to sit down and start cutting the documentary. And I think you can be so close to a concept. And so it's the idea that we're talking about hiring a different editor to cut your reel, right? Cut my documentary. Yeah, I could cut it. In fact, I had taken Final Cut training and all of that, and I could cut it if I had all the time in the world to do it. But I don't see myself as an editor. So I brought an editor in. I brought a friend in who was cutting for he was cutting for, I think it was NBC at the time. And Ted, who's now a writer producer himself, Ted sat down and started just going through the footage. I mean, he went through our footage for a couple of weeks, just listening to what was being said in the clips and looking at the images and thinking about what images go together and what ways, and listening. We called it listening for the narrative, listening to all of the audio in these clips and trying to hear the underlying thread, the wisdom in what people were saying, and order it in such a way that when you put these clips on a timeline, you started hearing a story emerge from these pictures and from what the people were saying. And you can't do that if you don't have a sense of the story being told and what the premises of your documentary might be, or the themes might be, and then being just open to being able to correlate images with dialogue into a narrative storyline, and hear it make sense in your head as an editor, and then order those clips in a way that when somebody else watches it played back, they hear the same message and they get the same point.
And to mention something else, there are times, not a lot, but there are times where the person behind the film or project, whatever it is, had an original intent, but what they ended up with is not near that intent, and they do not have the means of knowing how to put it together, and they will rely on you, the editor, with your visual eye, because again, you are the outsider. That's why you hire an editor. They're the outsider. They were not attached to anything, and they're not partial to anything. If you showed me something, I'm not partial to any of it. Mike could have been partial to it, and I'm like, Mike, I was not there. I don't care. I'm here to help put this together the best way I can. You want to stick to that one shot that you did, even though I'm telling you that shot makes no sense and you don't need it. Okay. Right? You don't want that. You want a collaborative effort. You want somebody that's going to come in there and put the project, at the forefront. Think about the project, put that together. Right. And a lot of times you have to be a problem solver for that. I had so many people actually say, hey, do you know how to fix this? Really? I have to fix this, because there were either production issues or, so many things happen. I even had an issue where I was the third editor. Keep that in mind. I was the third editor asked to re-edit a short film. Third editor to re-edit a short film. That was already a thing. And the director's original length was 45 minutes long. That's not a short film. That's just weighed down excess crap that didn't need to be in there, because there were so many side stories that was like, okay, I need to take this. And he even told me, I don't know what to do. You take a crack at it. Literally, no guidance, nothing. Just gave me the edit, so I knew exactly where things should be. But then it was left to my own devices as to, okay, do I keep this? Do I repurpose it? What do I do? How do I rearrange? And I ended up rearranging some things, and I made it much more linear, and I cut it from 45 down to 20.
It's funny because that's kind of what happened on my first documentary is me and my producer, we kind of got this idea that our finished, I went out and shot for several weeks with like maybe 4 keywords in my head about what this documentary was about. And I looked for stuff that supported those terms, those suggestions, those concepts. And then our thought was we were probably going to come back and we were going to cull this thing down into like maybe a 12 or 15-minute mini doc, right? And when we started laying it all down, and we brought in our editor, I ended up ultimately working with 3 different folks. But Ted did the lion's share of it. And on the first documentary, particularly, he cut us a rough program of 45 minutes long. And so then we were sitting there going, well, God, 45 minutes cut fairly cohesively together. How do you cut it down to 15 minutes without eliminating something that's kind of an important point that somebody might want to hear about, And so because Ted, who is now a writer, I'm going to emphasize that Ted is now a writer full time. He doesn't cut anymore. But because he had writer's genes, right? He said, well, why don't you, he gave me a pickup list, okay? Which is something that you get sometimes on a feature film, and the editors are cutting alongside the shooting crew, and you're making the feature and you got your feature script and everything, and the editors are going, yeah, but this scene would cut together so much nicer if you give us some inserts of these particular shots that we can cut in between the other material and have the visual flow work with the narrative, right? And so Ted did the same thing with our documentary. He said, well, if you got a couple of more scenes, like, he's like, go and it was a document. It was an agricultural documentary about artisan cheesemakers. And he goes, you don't have a clinical point of view in any of this material from your doc. What if you go talk to somebody whose job is to work from the clinical side of dairy farming and talk about things like infections and talk about things like antibiotic overexposure and stuff like that. So we went and we booked a guy, a prominent scientist at UCLA, and we shot interviews with him and went to his facility and everything, and that started cutting nice and lights together. By the time we got done, we got over an hour, which then became a better running time for a documentary, like a little over an hour. And it was because our editor had a strong sense of story and could tell us what, I didn't see it at the time,
That's where collaboration comes in. Collaboration comes in. You, the filmmaker, could have seen something originally, and then you bring on the editor, and the editor's like, you know what? If you happen to have this shot, I think that would help sell this even more. And you're like, light bulb.
Yeah.
We should have gotten that, or yes, we can get that, or run right out and grab it.
And because I was visual, Ted would say it in a way that I was like, oh yeah, I can totally see that working in my head. So now I know what I got to go do. And give me your thoughts on this. So I'm going to put it into the narrative and it's going to fit how. And he's like, well, talk to this guy about dairy farming legislation and regulation, and talk about antibiotics and how most of the animals that we're consuming are just overrun with antibiotics, because if not, the diseases in industrial farming are so bad that we would be poisoning ourselves. And that was a whole side of the narrative that I had never thought of, because the root material that we found initially were these 2 humble farmers in Northern California that had this wonderful small artisan farm, and those weren't part of their daily concerns. And so, but when you added that, when you contrasted their story with the ugliness of industrial large-scale farming and agriculture, it added that extra dimension to the documentary that only came about because our editor was so steeped in storytelling. He was more than a cutter. He was a storyteller that just used cutting as his means of expression.
mine was shooting
also,
images, you know,
and
his.
also when you are emphasizing, your point of view, you are doing it in the benefit of the project. You're not doing it for self-grandizing or anything like, oh, I got to get my way all the time. It's like, no, anything I ever say or contribute is to better the project, whatever it is I'm involved in.
I can
And
think
Mike
of
and I have actually worked together and collaborated on a project of his where I was actually asked to edit. And that was one of the best collaborative experiences I've had.
which was that?
Hmm?
Which
Oh,
one?
remember the UCF
Oh
video?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm?
Oh, that was the other thing I was gonna say when you were talking about doing more than one job. I can cut, guys. Okay, I can cut. If I got all the time in the world, I can cut real good, right? But am I an editor? No. Why? Because I don't know all the tricks, and I don't know anything about After Effects by design. I shoot. That's what I do. So when I asked Ashton to cut this documentary, uh, it was about that little the UCF medallion that you made, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Totally built that thing from 3D virtual
From
space,
scratch.
a beautiful logo, and I'm just like, I could you could have sat me down at that computer for 1,000 years, and I wouldn't have come up with that because
And
it's not what I
custom
do.
lower thirds with the same thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's not what I do. So this is the other reason why you want to collaborate with other professionals by bringing somebody in that complements what you do, and they add to that, and the two of you or the three of you or the 50 of you, whatever it ends up being, it's the combination of all that effort together that makes this amazing whatever it is, movie, TV show, commercial, music video, whatever. Okay. So this is the other reason why I was always attracted to large scale filmmaking, because the more people you get in a room, and somebody said I was on an international film one year. I did the Taylor of Panama in Central America, and all the crew was basically from Ireland or England, except me and a couple of guys that I brought down from Miami. And the guys on that movie, one of them said one day, he goes, we're all here because we're good. We're all here because we're the top of our game, right? That's what it's about. Is when you get in a situation with that many creative individuals, you can't help but walk away with something awesome. And so that's why I never sought to work alone or be kind of an isolated, small scale filmmaker. It's a comfortable idea the older I get, but when I was younger, I wanted all that feedback. I wanted that exposure. I wanted to meet people that were good at what they do. I could learn from them. I could befriend them. They could help me. I could eventually help them. So I sought large scale filmmaking for the community, right? And that word should resonate with you, community, right? So you're in a community right now, young people, filmmakers, graduating from college. What's your community, right? You want to be part of this larger subset called filmmakers, a film industry, right? But there are tiny subsets within that larger Venn diagram, right? So what's your community right now? Who's in it? How do you all complement one another? And can you move around as a family, let's say, and rise together in a market where you might be getting into more large scale filmmaking? It's gonna raise your profile as a filmmaker. It's gonna earn you a better living, I think. It's gonna expose you to a larger world with more options and opportunity. Um, what's your plan? What's your idea? That's a theme that we're gonna talk about over and over again all through the semester. But these are things that I think should be on your mind now proactively, so that
Oh yeah.
you're
Mhm.
not graduating and then going, oh, now what do I do?
And another thing to keep in mind when it comes to what Mike said about the film community, there's actually so many different film communities. There are groups of people that are just weekend warriors. They do filmmaking for fun. So they put a project together and they keep doing it, on and off, but they never go out and try to actually make a career out of it. And if sometimes when you look at the work, you would say to yourself, yep, I cannot see this person ever getting paid for doing this kind of stuff. So it's about that network, but it's also networking with the right people that have the same interests as you. All right. So if you're looking to do this as a career, as to something you get paid, then you're going to want to associate with people that are on the same level as you, not really the weekend warrior types, that are like, oh, I just do it for fun. Or I'm a retired and I just do this now as that's my thing. But I don't have to, I'm not looking to make any money, and I don't care what, anybody really says. I'll put it out in a little festival, whatever, and that's it. That's it. And then I'll just go out and do something else again.
That's okay if you got other means, but I always had to work. I never had any support system.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing. If you're looking to make a career out of it and you really want the work, and the other thing too is if you really want to, is that when you work on a project like that and the material is not good, guess what? You're not going to want to put that on your reel. Think about it. If you look at it and it's like, that's shoddy, it's like, oh God, I don't want to showcase that. That's not
any means of expression is, it can be introspective, it can be reflective, right? It could be reacting to things in your world, right? Documentaries are definitely reactive, they see an issue and they respond in kind with a visual metaphor or a visual narrative that argues for, against, or advocates for a concept, right? It can be internal. You can be an experimental filmmaker that's trying to express ideas that are hard to articulate in other media like writing or singing or something, but visual seems to click with you as a creative, so you like that means of expression. There's lots of different outlets for your creativity, and I think at the end of the day, it's about getting better at what you do, showing progress, showing growth. As a creative, I think it's all about growth. The process, the concept of art and the process of creativity, craftsmanship, I think speaks to cycles of growth, maturity, evolution, right? And the more you do something, the more refined your techniques become. The more you do something, the more focused your message becomes. The more you do something, the more presentable your exhibitions are. The more you do something, the more deeply you understand the concepts that you address. The more you do things, the larger your audience gets that is looking at what you create and absorbing what you offer. And then that becomes a feedback loop. And the audience starts to speak back to you and say what they like, what they don't like. They start reporting back to you the messages that they're hearing. Do those messages reflect your intention, or are they new perspectives that you didn't expect them to have? And that gives you an idea, and that takes you to the next level of something. And I think the other thing that this reel can be, or this portfolio can be, is it can be a chronological artifact that explains your own evolution as a creative, right? So you're going to cut a reel now. Maybe you're a camera person or an editor or an actor, director. The reel that you cut now upon graduating from UCF is not going to be the reel you're going to cut even in a year after you've graduated. And then 3 years after you've graduated, you're going to need a new reel again. It's going to show how you've grown and matured in the 3 years since you've been in college. And so this becomes a lot like Rembrandt painting his own self-portrait over decades. And this is what he looked like at 18, 23, 25, 30, 32, 38, 40, right? It seemed like several times in a decade, Rembrandt was doing a self-portrait, right? Either he didn't have anybody that had contracted him to paint anything else, or he was chronicling his own life, his own maturity, right? And with every painting, there were different things to look at: better shadows, more detail, more realism, more, less realism, different brushstrokes, techniques as they change and evolve and move in and out of his preferences, right? So your reel or your portfolio is also going to become a living document that's going to explain who you are as a creative over the course of your career. So it's not, don't think of it only as for your potential employers, but also think about it as a document of your own journey, if you will.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it any better.
How's that sound? Do you guys buy that? So,
Hey, I bought it years ago. It still works for me.
so Ashton's doing the lion's share of the talking, and I'm getting my words in edgewise. But what about everybody else here? We've only heard a couple of questions out of the group here that's shown up. So what do you folks think about this? I know the conversation kind of became about being an editor as opposed to cutting a reel, but I don't see how you can talk about one thing without maybe talking about the other. I mean, not, you know, what do you think? And I think that most of you that I can see in my little thumbnails are all thinking about cutting for a career anyway. So what do you got? Go ahead. I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Mostly this is a question more geared to Ashton. First of all, thank you for spending your time and coming to talk with us. We really appreciate it. I guess my question to you was, how was work when like the pandemic was just starting?
Oh, I can tell you that I actually had a pretty high paid gig before, and then that got shut down because of the pandemic. And that was pretty lucrative. I mean, we're talking, it was for a pretty decent company, and I had they wanted someone to shoot their conference and then edit it, and so I just hired a small crew, and I was going to edit it, so I was able to name my price and everything else. And they loved the video. It was 2 videos, and they loved it, and it was actually the month that everything was officially shut down and like, okay, everyone stay home, I was actually gonna go to New Orleans for a shoot there. And I was so disappointed by that. And then, I tried to do some follow-ups, and then I couldn't really hear back from them, but I pretty much understood probably that. And then I had a promo video I was going to do for another company, and they went through a lot of restructuring post pandemic because apparently a lot of his employees apparently wanted to just stay home and collect a paycheck and not actually come back to work. So that was a lot of things there. So a lot of things alter other things, and it really just like, oh. So what I ended up doing was I worked with a buddy of mine named Gerald, who needed a camera guy to go out and help shoot some episodes for a show he's doing called Indie Cinema Showcase, that he showcases in the Florida channel. And so the premise of his show is just to go out and cover all the entertainment venues, like MegaCon. We covered that. We went to this Kahana stunt school that was in Florida. We covered all these different areas, and that's been giving me plenty of work on the video side. And then when it comes to editing, I will sometimes help out with editing from time to time. He basically handles the majority of it. But I also had a friend of mine who I had hired years ago, who is doing so well with doing like wedding videos and things like that, that he actually got backed up and said, hey dude, do you mind if I maybe hire you, on an hourly basis to edit some videos for me? And I said, sure. And it was just because he got so backed up, he couldn't do them. And so I've been doing that on the side. And then anybody else that's asked me to do stuff, I've been doing that. So last year was not very good, but it's kind of been coming back, which is good. So last year was terrible.
But it seems like that situation almost made you even more creative with how you make your projects or even make your income. Would you think that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The funny thing about being multi-versatile, being able to shoot, edit, and things like that, it doesn't limit you in terms of what you could do. If someone needs like logo design or animation like that, it's like, I could do that. Okay, throw it my way. That's a couple
Mhm.
bucks right there for me. Someone needs, editing for this. Oh, I know exactly what the price is. Boom. And I tell them the price, so that's it. They either hire me or they don't. And the other thing that's been just fortunate is just that I've been working my primary job, as an instructor, like Mike. And that's allowed me to be able to go out and do some, other side gigs as well. So that's been very helpful too.
Very cool, very cool. And I guess my last question is: you said you primarily your workstation is your iMac from 2012, correct? Or
That's refurbished. 20.
oh no, hey man, if it gets the job done, it gets the
Hey,
job
it
done.
gets the job done. You would never have known it was refurbished at all.
Yeah, well, because it was cool because I moved from Mac to PC about a couple years ago, and I actually went with like a gaming tower.
Mhm.
And that came with like the really awesome GPU and like the Ryzen 7 processor and everything like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there to everyone else. Like, you don't have to go with Mac because Mac is the most expensive.
Just to verify, you do not have to go with Mac. You can do your own computer. If you even are able to build your own, go ahead and build your own and use a PC. There's nothing wrong with that. Just be aware though that some places would want you to be able to maybe work on a Mac or work on a PC. So you got to be able to be versatile in working on the different systems, but they're generally the same. When you work on one program, it doesn't, working on Premiere in PC doesn't mean it changes in Mac or vice versa. It's the same program, same hotkey, same everything. So, you can do that on those systems just as well.
Right.
That could be a great facet of the conversation we talked about being a staffer versus being a freelancer. Then the notion that if you're a staffer, you probably need to work with a tool set that is consistent amongst the other people that you work with in the office. But if you're a freelancer, your tools are your tools, which raises another very important point, which is if your Mac is a 2012 Mac, but you're a crackerjack editor and you cut a reel that just sizzles, baby, and you put it on YouTube, the last thing anybody's going to ask you is what code you cut it on. Anybody who asks you that question missed the point. It went over their head like a 747. Content is king.
That was on a
Content
late
is king.
2012. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I say this to my writing students all the time.
Come back. You know what? That was a great reel, but come back when you actually have like a 2020, maybe.
Come back when you got a better computer. Yeah, right. No, content is king, man. That's the conversation in my writing classes. Content is king. That's first and foremost. The message is the medium, not the equipment, not the technology, right? Now, technology can hold you back, but it's all about content. And the content, I think, in this conversation is about story and narrative, and it's about reflecting on that narrative and exhibiting your abilities. If you are a cohesive communicator, that's what they want. They're speaking to an audience, whether it's Coke or Adobe or Chevy or Playboy or the Ale House. They're speaking to an audience about a concept or a product, and can you communicate those ideas visually, written, with the editing, whatever it is? And then it's about the technology, right? And sometimes the technology is the bridge, it is the way, the means with which you can improve your message, but most of the time, the most successful, I think the most successful campaigns are about very simple ideas. And
very, very simple ideas.
Because a simple idea reaches the broadest audience, right? And then you got, a bigger audience coming at you for that thing that you're talking about, selling, working with, whatever it is, that breeds your success, right? So maybe we are having kind of the same conversation. We're just talking about it on all the little different points and facets that surround this idea. We're all looking to be filmmakers. hold on to my filmmaking side of me in my semi-retirement. So yeah, so how do we want to sum up this conversation? I mean, what do we want to say? And we kind of talked about reels and we know what they are. I mean, on a fundamental level, I think everybody that came to this meeting kind of knows what a reel's for and a portfolio is for, but have we advanced any of those ideas to reach more deeply into your own mission objectives, into your own career aspirations, or have the aspects of the conversation about the craft of editing kind of given you anything to think about moving forward? How can we encapsulate or sum up this conversation, I think would be the next question to ask.
That's a good one.
Or do we have more questions? I certainly don't want to shut the Q&A down if it's premature.
I do have just one more last question. I'm sorry,
One
but
more? One more, Matt?
Yeah,
Two.
one more.
That was one more before.
I'm
Bring it.
sorry. Okay. All right. Is there a way that we can contact you, Ashton, to inquire about your editing services for our own reels?
Absolutely. Mike actually has my contact information, and he'd be more than happy to share that with you.
On the screen,
Awesome.
baby. Vimeo.com, Ashton B. Here's his reel. I also put his information in web courses in it's module 2. So there's a page with Ashton's bio, with his I think I put your email up there. If I didn't, maybe you know what, we can put it in the chat really quick if you want to pop the email up in there.
Actually, I will go ahead and do that right now.
I'm pretty sure I put it up there though in web courses.
Well, just in case, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's terrific. I appreciate you being open to, soliciting these questions outside of the meeting here. That's really wonderful.
No, I don't have a problem.
So I think it's part and parcel of a common theme. You guys are getting ready to take the leap of faith into the industry, take your creativity and your discipline, your creative discipline, whether that's cutting or shooting or acting or directing, wear your opinions and your style on your sleeve like armor, and just go out there and put it out there. But don't be afraid to keep an open mind. Don't be afraid to collaborate. Don't be afraid to allow your ideas or your notions of how things are to evolve. Don't be quick to dismiss new ideas. It's all about the metamorphosis of ideas. In writing, we talk about rhetoric as the subtext of a written document or a speech, and we talk about rhetorical velocity, the notion that I have an idea and I express it in some means of execution or demonstration, a video, a speech, a book, a TV show, and it inspires you to have an idea, and you take my idea and you evolve it with your point of view, and then it becomes a bigger idea and sometimes a different idea, or it takes that idea to the next level, right? And that can only happen if you're going at things with an open heart and an open mind. Don't be closed up in any of these ways that will prevent you from evolving, from experiencing something new that might feed your own creativity, feed your point of view, inspire you for the next stage of whatever it is you're doing. And I think this is just part of it. It's, having your documents, presenting them to people, asking people for collaboration, for opportunity, working with them, serving their needs in terms of helping them with their message. Don't be afraid to work for other people before you become an independent contractor, because you're going to see how other people like to work, what other people's ideas are. You're going to work in their environments or their worlds that you might not have access to in any other way, and just be open to it. Accept all of the experience in the beginning. Take whatever you can get, learn from it, categorize it, store it away for use later, whatever it is. What do you got there, Ashton?
You'll learn by doing what Mike said. You'll learn techniques that you'll take for yourself. Like I worked for an editor, and I still use his technique for organization to this day. And I message him periodically, like, you still use that? And I say, yeah, because it works for me perfectly. And then you learn what not to do. Believe me, editing has helped me tremendously beyond anything else to learn what not to do when it comes to being a filmmaker, whether editing or seeing somebody else, shoot their project or put it together.
If you don't know what to do, it's equally helpful to know what not to do.
Yes.
It's the other side of the coin.
Remember all the time Spielberg kept saying to people after Jaws, hey, don't shoot on that, in the water. Don't shoot in the water. Guess what? Nobody listened. And then we had Waterworld. If anybody
never shoot with a rubber fish.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to listen. Okay, fine.
Wow. Well, I think the conversation's going really well. Is there anybody else that wants to offer any feedback to this or
Any
address
other
any of the
questions?
issues?
Oh, we got one.
We got a taker?
Yes, I remember you saying that that work was really slow in the Orlando area. Are there any other areas within Florida where I could find like an office job for like video editing, like Tampa or Miami, or are there any other places?
Yeah, those are considered like major markets, like especially for like television. So you should definitely be able to find some stuff there, because there's always still stuff going on. Like even if you're not like, listen, there's always stuff for like the Golf Channel. They always need editors there, because guess what? Golf has never stopped going. I don't play golf. It's not my thing, but there are plenty of people who love it. All
Golf
right.
Channel's in Orlando now. They're not in Tampa anymore. They're over here in Orlando.
Yeah.
But I was
Mhm.
going to say Miami would be my first pick. Miami has a commercial market, which is domestic and international. It has an independent feature market, which is primarily international. It has national big budget attraction. Studio films go to Miami a lot on big budget contracts. So you have this really interesting sort of what do you want to, how would we, what would we say about it? That you've got this whole range of choices, different levels, domestic or international. There's people that come in from France, from Germany, from Europe all the time, pay cash for things, make small independent feature films. They come in under the radar and they leave under the radar. And the only people that really know about these are the people that live and work down in Miami, and they're close to the rumor mill and the grapevine when stuff like that comes into town. There are people that I can remember in my past that I met briefly who had long and fruitful, successful careers in Miami, and I had no idea who they were, had never met them before, never run into them on a job on a TV show or a feature film, and yet 20, 30 years in the industry, and they've done all these commercials and stuff, and they've been working in Miami the whole time. And it's an insular community down there, and if you can find your way in, so you've got Spanish markets, US markets, you've got French markets, and then you've got all the other international flavors going on down there. Really great opportunity. In fact, my union affiliation, my East Coast union affiliation for years was Miami before I moved out to LA. My affiliation was Miami. So I would look there if you've got any inroads or any relatives or any friends that are in that direction. And then, of course, Atlanta is the next closest market that has, an abundance of opportunity to offer you. What do you say? Anybody else? I noticed I had 2 pages of faces here that I don't always get to talk. How about Colin or David, or what else we got here? Anybody else have any thoughts on that or questions?
I actually did have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned earlier, like you had a writing class, and since we were kind of talking about resumes and making those, I'm kind of more interested in the writing aspect, primarily going towards that. So how would you say like building a resume for writing is, since you can't really like utilize a reel there?
You could do essays that you can get published. You can do articles. You can do short scripts and produce them and put stuff on YouTube. You can write for other filmmakers that need a concept or they've got everything else lined up, but they don't have a story to tell. That's not as unusual as you might think. Um, and you can collaborate in those ways. You could also, I wonder if it was your video that I commented on about looking for work as a writer's assistant.
Yeah.
Want to write for TV, particularly. A lot of people who want to work in film and television, they look for PA work when they're first starting out. And that'll either get you in the production office or it'll get you on set, and then you'll have access to certain aspects of skills in either of those areas. But the writers are always kind of this nebulous group of people because they work off production. Maybe they come to the set and watch you making the sausage. Maybe they don't, but they write all about it in their insular world that they live in. But they also have PAs. They're writers assistants who take notes for them, get coffee for them, organize their daily writers room activities, maintain communication between writers that might work face to face or work remotely. And that's a really good way to learn the business by serving other active writers who are working on a show, and get your feet wet that way. But I think if you're a writer, then you're just gonna write. You're gonna write something, you know.
Right.
I don't write nearly as many scripts as I write, for instance, articles. I get published in, say, Video Maker magazine. I've written 6 feature articles for them in the past couple of years. I do that. I'm working on 2 different novel projects and a memoir project. So that's 3 book projects. And then I'm working in the world of script writing with my students every day at UCF. I have friends who are screenwriters who I talk to in LA all the time, and they tell me how the industry is from their point of view out there. But I think if you're a writer, you're just going to write. What you need as a writer more than, well, you need a job, obviously, but the second thing you need as a writer is an audience. So if you're writing things that nobody can read, that nobody has access to, then you're not being heard, so you're not being known. B, you're not getting your feedback loop from your audience, which is critical as a writer. And then, it's not helping you find work. So Chris Odom might be helpful to you in terms of talking about websites and stuff in a couple of weeks, and talking to you about how to set up your own website where you can send people to a website and they can read little treatments or little excerpts from stuff that you're doing and get a sense of what your writer's voice sounds like and what your style looks like and or sounds like, and they can see examples of your work, and they can gauge your skill sets in terms of your word craft. So there's things that you can do. And as a writer, I think it's funny that I think you're going to wake up every morning just craving avenues for you to express yourself rhetorically. So I think any means is going to help you, whether it's writing a book or an article or a script. Just don't
Right,
stop
yeah.
writing. Just don't stop writing.
Right. Yeah. Because I've done some film reviews, and of course, I have some like script excerpts I've worked on in class and school and short stories and all that. So I was just, seeing like include everything in the resume essentially. Yeah, as much as you can.
And I think the next step that you should start focusing on is getting published somewhere so that your voice is heard by the audience. There's Medium website where you can put written documents up on the internet, and people will check out your work and comment back. Try to get published. There's nothing sounds better than saying, yeah, I'm a published writer. I'm not just a writer, I'm a published writer. That means that you've gone through a certain vetting process. Somebody has read something that you've done. They have contracted you to write something for them. They have gone through an editing process with you to refine what you submitted to them to make it presentable to their audience. And then you had an audience built in from that client that was going to give you feedback on what you did. It's a very healthy thing to do when you get published as a writer, because it starts informing you more than just writing in a vacuum. Feedback is so important. That's why I stress critique and workshops in my writing classes, because that's how you learn who you are as a writer. It's not what you think you hear yourself saying, it's what your audience hears, right? And do those messages agree? What you're trying to say, what you're trying to impart, is that being received by your audience? And are they reflecting back to you in the right way? So get published. I think that would be, and put that at the top of your resume.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
What else we got? Anybody else? Feelings, thoughts, gossip, rumors, stories, reflection? Well, then I think I'll take this opportunity, Ashton, to thank you once again for spending your afternoon with us, for offering your time and your advice and your experience. And
No,
your
Mike,
feedback.
thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come out.
I appreciate it. If I can repay the favor, please let me know. Thanks again for talking to us about these concerns. And maybe we can get you back at some point. That would be terrific if we can get you back in here to talk more about craft and creativity, and you seem to have more facets than merely editing, so it's good sometimes to hear the different points of view, and you're out there in the world and you're earning a living, which is, that's what we're going for, right? We're not doing this, it's not film club, it's film business, and the business of getting paid and making a living doing what you love, as opposed to treating it like a weekend thing, like a weekend warrior.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. Then I'm going to motion to adjourn if there's no further questions or responses at all to the conversation.
You guys have a
Directors.
really good instructor here.
Directors, do they need demo reels?
Yeah. Speak to it, Ashton.
Yes, everyone needs a demo reel. And
What if you
what?
don't?
Go ahead.
What if most of the stuff that you've directed on only features yourself and just a couple other people from time to time, but mostly you?
So what? That's like an actor's reel.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, really, actor's reel is almost no different than a director's reel. You're showcasing performance, right?
All right.
You're
Sean,
showcasing how you can get a
looking to
performance
direct?
out of somebody.
Huh?
Are you looking to direct, Sean? Is that your focus at this point?
Oh, that's one thing. Yeah. Produce, act, direct,
So
right?
it's a little bit of a part and parcel thing, two sides of the same coin. So you have the director, whose job is to elicit performance that falls in line with their notion of what the tone and the story is that they're trying to tell. And then you have performance, which is the reflection of all of that guidance from the director and the exhibition of the ideas physically, verbally, non-verbally by the actors. So if you're a director and you have a reel, your reel should be all about demonstrations or examples where you were able to elicit a really fine performance out of an actor that resonates of the script and the script's message. So just like I would want people to look at my images, you need people to look at the performances you've been able to extract or elicit or inspire out of your actors. So I can see where there's lots of disciplines that can benefit from a reel, not just a cameraman.
Thanks.
That was a good question. Yes, I see a hand.
It occurred to me, for trying to get into your position, is it a good idea to not only try to go there in person and also like using those websites where you put up your resume and then the employer uses that website or whatever. It's like, oh, hey, look at look at this person. Is that really a good option to like say, like I saw like the other day, like, oh, use this website to get hired or whatever? Is there like an actual really good website for that, where like, okay, I put my resume here and I do, you know, I put my reel there and then I could get hired through there, or is it just to ignore it, or could try to go in person, or
You can't ignore it. IMDb was the thing that we were all kind of hip with, years back, because it was your resume online basically by somebody else. So it wasn't necessarily you doing it, it was somebody else verifying what you're doing and putting it up there for the online community to look at. So I always loved IMDb. In recent years, I've also built 2 or 3 different websites that have my resume on there, some reels on there, some writing excerpts on there, and some interviews and stuff. And that's helpful. I think it's a multi-pronged attack, really. I'm from this generation, right? So I'm all about the interpersonal thing. If you can find somebody, corner them in an office, shake their hand, put a business card in their hand and say, I'm George, I'm looking for work. This is what I do, and talk to them, and I'm all about that, man. For me, for some reason, I don't trust somebody who doesn't want to meet me face to face. Now, in a COVID generation, that's kind of an odd thing to say, right? Because now it's dangerous to meet somebody face to face. But outside of those odd criteria, the film business is all about interpersonal relationships, and you can't do this remotely over the phone and on a website. Sooner or later, you're going to have to sit in somebody's office, and you're going to have to talk to them. You're going to have to collaborate with them. You're going to have to show them more than just what you can say. How many of you get tongue tied when you got to call somebody on the phone, right? But does your body language infer what your tongue can't get out of your mouth? You walk in confident, give somebody a strong handshake, and look like you belong there, or are you so timid that you can't bear to go to an in-person interview, and you can only speak to your strengths and your assets by remote, by email or something. I don't think that an industry like the film business has a lot of room for somebody who doesn't have the ability to function in a face-to-face environment when it's healthy and safe and wise to do so, obviously.
As someone had told me years ago, be ready. If you are an introvert, you are stepping into an extroverted world.
Yeah. I was actually alarmed.
They're not gonna be waiting for you to finally turn. You either are or you finally turn. They're not waiting for you, because they'll go to somebody else that's ready to go.
Yeah.
That's the way this business is. If you're not willing or ready to go, good. I'll go to Joe Schmo over here. He's ready, or she is, and I don't have to deal with you. I can deal with that.
It's funny when people are busy, they'll tell you they can't take a meeting right now, or so-and-so's not in the office today, or so-and-so's in a meeting and he can't speak to you, but when they need something and you show up, they'll take you, they'll listen to you, what you got to say, because they need to know if you can help them out of their, whatever their dilemma is right then and there. So you can't be discouraged by initial rejection, because that rejection probably isn't personal. It probably has more to do with timing and to the access than it has to do with qualification or disqualifying you as a candidate for some reason. Having said that, I can tell you I was never more alarmed than when some years back now, I went to talk to somebody about a job posting that they had for some work that I thought I could be effective at doing. And I went to the establishment in person and asked to meet the individual who had posted the job posting online. And they said, well, we don't meet people in person. If we look at your resume and we like what we read, we'll give you a call. And I said it right in that moment. I said, so I could tell you anything on a piece of paper to get an interview, but you won't meet me face to face to find out who I am and figure out whether or not I'm the real deal. If you don't know who you're talking to, and I'm standing right in front of you, maybe you're not the best person for me to work for or work with. I don't know that I trust anybody that's not willing to look me in the eye and tell me what you want. Tell me if I can help you. And if I can't, thank me for my time and send me on my way, because that's the best, that's the best thing you can do for me. Don't waste my time. What's the turnaround time on emails? You know, you send somebody an email and you're lucky if they respond back in an hour or even the same day. Maybe it's a couple of days later they respond to you, and then they ask you another question, which prolongs the process even further. You know, when somebody says, let's meet for a cup of coffee, I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that. Because I'm going to figure out more about you by sitting in front of you anyway. I'm going to see your body language. I'm going to see your facial expressions. If you're struggling for a word, but I get a sense that you're trying to really be open and honest with me, you just can't articulate, I'm not going to hold that against you. You know, there's so much power in a face-to-face interview or face-to-face discussion that I don't think happens through email. And it's really hard sometimes to discern the tone of somebody through an email. You know, you could think that they're being aggressive and rude to you in an email, and it's just because they write and speak in an abbreviated form, you know, through social media or whatever, and that it doesn't reflect their actual tone at all. But you could take it the wrong way, and the whole thing could go south out of misunderstanding. So I'm all, you know, I'm all about the person to person thing. And like Ashton says, the film business is about interpersonal relationships. And there's no such thing as, you know, everybody on sooner or later, people have to get together to make a film. You can't do it all remotely. You can't, not yet. Although John Favreau's trying with the, what's his Boba Fett Mandalorian thing. You know, they're doing all that interesting stuff with the computers and whatnot, but still at the end of the day, there was some people that had to meet in a room and grind out the source material. So, you know, we're not completely remote yet, not in this world. They take you the long way around the block on that one.
Thank you for answering my question. I was really wondering, so IMDb, okay, I'll make an account for that one.
Yeah, but I mean, build your own website, put it out there. You know, even I can do that. Wix is great.
Okay.
Cool. What do you say, folks? Anybody else?
Man, there's a lot I need to say. They're just not on the top of my head right now.
Well,
That's
all right. We got all semester for you to work it out.
True with a
Remember,
double O.
you can always shoot me or Ashton an email, and if you think of your question later, I know we probably bombarded you with a lot of stuff, giving you a lot to think about. So
Oh, definitely. That reel thing really got me thinking, and that resume thing, thinking, do I have enough or is it too much? And will the quality be good enough for them?
yeah.
All that stuff, all those big responsibilities that we're gonna have to do that we've already done.
And keep doing it, because you get better with practice. And if your reel doesn't demonstrate your current level of craftsmanship, your current level of understanding, or your current level of expression, then you should be doing something to update those ideas in a way that you can send somebody a link and they can look at your work and, you know, think about it. You know, it should be an up-to-date reflection of who you are as a creative person. And you only get better through repetition. So the more you do something, whether it's writing, shooting, editing, acting, directing, the more you do it, the more examples you have to choose from, and you can always pick the best reflection of your current ability out of a rich and fertile source of hundreds of clips, let's say. You know, you got 3 or 4, you know, it might be a harder reel to cut.
Well, here's a dilemma. The ideas I got, the stuff I got for the future are much higher quality than what I got now, you know? It's like what I see in my head is like huge. But what I got right now is not so huge.
Work within your
Yep.
means.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Work,
You gotta-
work within your means. That's the whole
so-
concept, for instance, of a budget. You know, if you've only got $1,000 to make a music video, it doesn't do you any good to pitch a $50,000 concept to your client.
It's
You
okay
gotta
to have,
work within your means.
it's okay to have your head in the clouds, but you got to have your feet on the ground at the same time.
Well, then I guess I'm going to have to be really dang tall.
Well, that what I'm referring to is that it's okay to be highly creative, but also keep in mind of like what your limitations are, of like what you have to work with. And think of this. Jaws is the greatest example of having to work around problems
Yeah.
and look at the result. The shark wouldn't effing work. Spielberg wanted that shark to work in the very opening shot. Shark is not working. Shark is not working. So they had to come up with all new other ideas to be able to showcase the shark is there. And you know what? The movie is way better for it. Way better for it.
That was the other point that I was gonna make before, and I waited and I forgot, which was, and this is a common theme, no matter what kind of filmmaker you are, right? And I learned this, I don't know if I learned it early on or if it took a while for it to sink in. Most of what we do as filmmakers is problem solve. More than anything else, we problem solve. What are the problems we're solving? Don't got enough money, don't got enough time, don't got enough manpower, don't have enough props, don't have enough computer power,
I
don't have
couldn't get
enough
this
camera
shot. I
gear,
couldn't get this actor in here. I couldn't do this.
whatever it is. So you're always going to be problem solving. You're always going to be operating at a deficit, and you're always going to be challenged to come up with a creative and innovative result despite the challenges and despite the restrictions. So the lesson there is that filmmaking and creativity is a process of reacting to constraint. It's a process of problem solving, and it's evolution through adversity. So anybody who walks into a situation and has all the money in the world, all the resources in the world, all the help in the world, are they going to come out with a better movie as a result of that? Not if they're a sucky storyteller. You know, sometimes it's the problems that develop on a job that bring out the best in us, because it kicks our creative
Creative
juice into
juices.
gear, right? You don't take things for granted and kind of cruise in expecting a given set of results to happen. You walk in there and you say, whoa, I gotta start thinking on my feet again. And when you think on your feet and you apply your creative brain, sometimes the solutions to the problem solving are better solutions than the plan going in.
When I
Right?
think about it, I kind of had those situations before when I cook stuff. I don't have this ingredient. I use an alternate source, you know, or if the food doesn't need this, maybe I'll just, I just don't need it, and it'll still be pretty good regardless. And you know what? In the end, even if it wasn't what I wanted, everyone enjoyed their food.
Do better next time.
Of course,
That's
of
it.
course,
That's
be more
really all it is.
and learn from those what's missing. Try to
Do
get
better
more
next time.
prepared.
There's no such thing as bad information, folks. So
course.
if you know, parsnips don't go well with, you know, farro pasta and, you know, white sauce, at least you know that, you know what you wanted, you didn't get that, you got something else and it didn't work out, which sometimes can happen, but you still have information that you can use the next time, which is don't use those ingredients anymore. They don't work well together. You know,
Like I-
whether it's
like I said-
actors or sets or props or ideas, whatever it is. So you can't, you know, there's no such thing as bad information. Unfortunately, you know, sometimes a project will fail and it will fail financially as a result, and that looks bad, but that doesn't really happen that much, not that much. I don't think.
No.
You know,
Well, I guess it's good. I guess it's always good to listen to your crew, because there are times when they might know something that's wrong with the thing, And I'm not saying take their answer right away. It's something to think about. Because who knows, maybe they might see something that you don't.
I'll tell you
Anything
this,
to make the project the best, you know?
Well, let's face it, we don't know everything.
no,
We
Of
don't,
course.
we
we
know.
don't know everything. If everyone knew everything, then we wouldn't need anybody else.
Pretty much.
That's why you come in with an idea or you had a set plan and then you're working with somebody else, they can come in and say, hey, why don't you maybe do this? Because this could work and collaborate to here. And you're like, yes, I'm doing that. Thank you. Because
tell you.
I know
Okay,
all of that.
yeah.
You
Because
might not,
sometimes the problem too is that if you are so hell bent on that one method of doing it, then you can't see the other areas.
It's
That's
good.
why
It's
you work with other people.
at times, if it's affordable, of course, sometimes it's good to do both. Take a look at them both. I
Mhm.
like it, like I said, when it's affordable though. Like if you have extra time and extra funds, okay, we got a little extra, so let's take both of those a try, or try to combine those ideas into something bigger.
Mhm.
well, digital made that a lot easier for us than the era of film, where film had inherent built-in costs that didn't make it practical to try everything. You know, because you had developing costs and you had raw stock costs and you had, you know, all of those complications. But digital has made it a little easier. I know DPs that, in fact, I did 3 movies with Larry Sher that shot the Joker. And Larry, when we used to shoot film, you know, we do 3 or 4 takes of stuff or whatever. But Larry, as a digital cinematographer now shooting on Alexas, he says, he says, I hardly turn the camera off anymore, because you never know when the actor, especially somebody like uh, uh, um, Jesus, Joaquin Phoenix, you know, what's he gonna do if if he's not thinking about the camera, and he's just sort of musing and trying a line on or something before the director wants to create a take, you know, and you capture it and you've got it now because you didn't turn the camera off. And so one of his big things now is he just, you know, the minute he sits down at the camera, he just starts rolling and see what happens, you know.
Hmm.
And
Hopefully
that's
there's enough
that's real
memory for
digital.
everything. Hopefully you got that camera all charged up and all that extra memory there to be able to do all that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the camera will just shut off in the middle of the scene or say it's full.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, you prepare for that situation and then you function under that, you know, modus operandi, which is big cards in the camera, plenty of batteries, and then just, you know, ride the red button, you know. But as far as going to the crew and asking the crew, you know, the crew doesn't always know technically what to do or conceptually what to do. But I can tell you one thing for sure: if they're happy, they'll do anything for you, and if they're not happy, they won't do anything for you. So if
Well,
the crew is happy and if you treat them well, if you are the taskmaster, you know, a good crew that's happy will give you 110% every day, you know, and a crew that's not happy will sit down and wildcat strike your production until they get their grievances resolved, you know. So think about that, and you know, and,
that's kind of like one of those methods I was thinking of doing in my movies. I've seen outtakes, and some times when I see those outtakes, especially if you're working on a comedy movie, maybe some of those could just be left in. Just say, hey, just like maybe someone just tripped over, and then I'm like, even if it's not actually part of the story, it gives a sense of realism in it. It gives a sense of, hey, these people are actually like, hey, I trip over in real life too, and then
lifts the veil.
and make a mistake like that all the time. So
Sure. I mean, isn't that kind of the popular thing now, to put the outtakes in the credit roll at the end of a movie, especially a comedy? You know,
well,
like
yeah,
Superbad
but
or something
I'm
like that.
saying like actually to add it in the movie. Like if the actors can stay in character when they make a mistake, then maybe if it works out, we can keep that inside and just say, hey, it's part of it now.
I'll give you an example. Okay. There was a short that I did And originally, the character is like an angel. And so he was talking to this guy, and he was supposed to just vanish out of his chair. Well, the actor, I had him, get up out of his chair, but he stayed in character when he got out. And I actually was playing it, and I liked how he got out of the chair so much. I was like, screw it, I'm using that instead.
Yeah, exactly. And did you know in Star Wars A New Hope, did you know that Luke Skywalker wasn't supposed to say, like, he was in the stormtrooper outfit and he was like, I can't see a thing in this helmet. That wasn't in the script. He was actually that was actually Mark Hamill talking to Harrison Ford. And he didn't know that. He thought the cameras just stopped while they were walking. So, and then once they saw it, they just left it in. It's like, hey, that's actually something Luke might say. He's a bit of an amateur when it comes to, like being in disguise and sneaking. What's that word? Well, I'm sure you catch my drift. So
Skulking.
it's like what?
Skulking.
That's not really the word, but whatever.
Oh.
So
Okay.
they thought that, hey, it's like putting a little bit of the actor into the character, because I've always known of how much an actor and a character really connect to each other.
Sure.
The actor
absolutely.
is the character. And that's sometimes why I get upset whenever actors get replaced on certain roles. I'm like, the actor is the character. It's not something you can just replace that easily.
You actually reminded me of something, and I want to just put this out there for my editing attendees at this point. I have started using Cinecolor lookup tables for some images to play with different color correction schemes and coloring and final coloring solutions and stuff. And I'm trying Cinecolor. Noam Kroll is he's the kind of, I don't know if he's the chief executive officer, but he's part of the, founding base of this company. We're gonna look at one of his podcasts in a few weeks. He's got a deal on, you can get, if you sign up for Cinecolor, if you register for their newsletter, I think, he gives you 2 free LUTs from his creative LUT pack. So if you're an editor or a colorist and you're interested in that kind of thing, he's got some pretty cool LUTs. I can tell you that already. And I've gotten a number of his free LUTs, and I've bought a few LUTs as well. And they're pretty nice. Like he's talking about the 70s LUT that he just came out with recently. I got his free 70s LUT package. So there's like a big package you can buy of several different looks within that LUT build. And then there's like a sampler that sometimes he'll give away for free, which has maybe 2 or 3 of the looks from a bigger package. And I got the 70s sampler package from him a couple of weeks ago. And it's really cool because it puts that sort of burnished, desaturated, warm tone look to the contrasty film look to your footage. It's really neat. And you can get it for free just by registering for his well, this is what it is. It's like I get one of these every few days or once a week. It's a newsletter. He tells me what he's up to. Sometimes he's got articles to read. Sometimes he's giving stuff away, and then you go to the website and you put in your number, and he'll send you a free little goodie pack. So if you're a cutter and you're interested and you're doing coloring and like to use LUTs, Cinecolor is a good resource. So check him out. I wanted to make sure I got that out there to you folks before I let you go. All right, I'm looking at the clock and I see like we're out of time. So again, thank you to Ashton for coming in.
Thanks,
and,
Ashton.
Sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you for allowing us to follow up with you if there's any questions that arrive after we shut down here. And let's have you back. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time.
Love to come back. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me, guys. It was great talking to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
All right.
Brian.
I'm going to put forward
Thank
the
you so
motion to
much.
adjourn. I'll put forth the motion to adjourn and I need somebody to second my motion.
I second.
Second the motion.
Second.
All right, folks.
Got
I'll be fit.
I got a fourth.
Thank you very much for your attendance, your time, and your attention. I'll see you guys next week in class. Thank you to Ashton for coming in. If you got anything, follow-up questions or whatever, you can send them to me through the email, through web courses, or directly to Ashton. And I will bid you all a happy afternoon.
All right, take care, guys.
Long and
Have a
prosper.
good day.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks a lot, guys.